Welcome to the Independent Characters, episode 219. This is Carl.
This is Josh.
And we're joined by a very special guest, Skye.
How's it going?
You've probably heard of Herrick Games. Skye is the owner of Herrick Games, probably along with your wife.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
And today we're going to be talking about, well, 10th edition 40k. We figured everybody else says we should talk about it too.
Surprise.
However, when you want to run a program that is as successful as the Independent Characters, whether depending upon how you define success, one of the things I like to do is approach topics like this from a different angle, because everybody and their mother is out there talking about 10th edition. Why wouldn't they be? It's like some of the biggest news in Warhammer 40,000.
Yeah,
we'd be remiss to not address it. But how can we talk about it not in the same way other people are? And so we've got a few ideas here and a few thoughts and things we want to discuss. But also, we're not going to do like an in-depth rules comparison.
We're going page by page, line by line, rule by rule.
Yeah,
starting with the Space Marine
else
index
has done
cards. All 800 of them.
All right,
That's
I'll
right.
see you guys next week.
Yeah. That's right. That's right. Trademark Games Workshop. Yeah. 1982. Here we go. Page one. No. So we got a few ideas on how we're going to talk about this a little bit differently. But if you're looking for like an in-depth look into how the game is very different than previous iterations, this is probably not the show for that. As we used to joke when Jeff and I ran the show, and we don't do Codex overviews because our listeners can read, and which is meant to be very complimentary of you folks who listen to this show. But I think there's limited value in that for everybody. We have forums, we have a Discord channel, we have all that stuff where you can discuss rules, questions, and thoughts and ideas. But here we're going to talk a little bit about what appeals to us about the game, as well as from the view of a independent retailer, kind of what some challenges are and what your perspective is and how it came out, and now that the aftermath is kind of worn down a little bit, where we stand there. But before we get into all of that, let's talk about our elite choice.
Absolutely.
Let's have you go first on this one, Josh.
Okay. Yeah. Everybody knows I've got a weakness for amazing Necromunda boards. So surprise, surprise.
Listen,
here we are.
You chose this before I did.
That's why you stole mine last time. So
yeah.
No.
I almost it came out shortly after the last time. I almost just plugged it into the notes right away, but I was like, I'll let Josh have this.
So we'll reveal the what we're talking about here. This is Max Skelrat's and his amazing Necromunda board. Yeah, which complete with lighting effects. He even has an Independent Characters logo on one of the bar signs out there.
Surefire way to get chosen.
Yeah, absolutely. shameless grab there. But yeah, no, just the attention to detail, the amount of lights that went into this. Again, there's just
amazing.
There's so much chaos. There's so many layers and levels and textures, and the light is a really nice touch as an addition to that. And this is just something he hadn't really been active with the community in a while, because he wasn't aware the show had come back, and this is what he'd been working on while the show had been away, and it was amazing, just an amazing project.
Kill it for me.
Yeah,
like I had some LED lights around here that I was like holding on to forever, because I'm like, I'll light something. Finally, in a part of a cleanup, I was just like, I'm tossing this. Like, I'm not going to use this thing that was stripped out of something else. Like, if I get serious about it, I'll buy it. But man, what an awesome.
Yeah, just an amazing board, amazing job, well done.
I get angry about this stuff in the sense that I see something like this and I'm like, this person lives too far away.
Yep. I invited myself over to his house.
Well,
I did. And he said, next time you're in, I think, Philadelphia, he's like, hit me up. It's like, cool. Because
that's where the Fresh Prince got into trouble, though.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. But it's
beautiful work, man.
The light, and something that's cool with that is Necromunda does have rules for you're fighting in the dark, like it's a night fight essentially, something like that. So having a board that you could turn off all the lights but still have enough ambient light that the board itself is producing to play a game by, super appealing. So just awesome. Job well done.
Sick.
Yeah.
It's so good. It's so good. I'll go next, and then I'll let you go, Skye. I chose Alex Aaron and his Warlord Titan.
Yeah.
There were actually a couple Adeptus Titanicus models that were shown over the last couple of weeks. The reason I chose his was, first off, the bright colors. I think he said even in his notes that like it was a departure from him, the brightness, if I remember correctly. But I love it because I typically paint with dark colors too. But I really wish I were better with lighter colors. And so this is really awesome. But also the attention to detail and the marbling like on the shoulder plates. That took it to another level for me. The glowing effect on the rear and on the weapon, I think
plasma just looks great, and that the blue, the white, and the yellow, all really vibrant colors that all pop and work really cohesively together.
And placed against a Martian type of red base, it makes it pop even further. I think this thing is just awesome. I would love to play against an army like this. So, really great work, Alex. This thing looks incredible. Absolutely incredible. Skye, what about you? You kind of went a different route.
Yeah, so I chose Dave Gormley's awesome squad markings for his works. And one, just because it's awesome. Like, I love it when people just go insane in our hobby and they're just like, I'm going to do this thing.
Dave is known for this.
I met him at Adepticon with his cosplay. It was awesome. That
armor plating, by the way, he was wearing at Adepticon, it looked heavy.
Yeah.
Like, and then you're all, oh, it's foam. Like, he did such a good job.
Yeah, he did such a good job. And like, so that's one thing is I just love when people are just like, I'm going to go extra in the hobby. So that's a piece of it. But also just people who play hordes or any army, like the ability to do it multiple ways. Like we were just talking before the show, that happens with Tyranids all the time. Like,
all the time.
This squad, why are there 12 Gaunts here suddenly? There's only supposed to be 10. But even like Space Marines, right? Suddenly you're like, you want to switch from a missile launcher to a las cannon. And you're like, well, their shoulder armor isn't painted the right way or whatever it might be. Guardians, I want to switch out something or whatever it is forever in any army. So I think those hobby hacks are really cool. And the execution of it with orcs, the individually painting it. Yeah, it's just, it's great. So I thought that was really, really cool.
Yeah, I think that's a good call out because we were talking before about the show, and actually I was talking to Josh while you were in here having a call, but one of the things I enjoyed in 7th edition, it had to be 7th edition at this point, was that list of Tervagons that would birth all the Termagons until they got gummed up or whatever. And I played a guy down in Southern California at a tournament with my my World Eaters army at the time, which was all like Forge World Eaters armor from the one that Deathcore Creek came from, Siege of Vrax. And they looked awesome. And I loved playing that army. It was not particularly competitive, but it was just like throw the guy in there with the demon weapon. Throw my guy in there with a demon weapon and you roll, 2d6, and if any of them's a 1, it screws him over. But if you roll 2 6s, it's like 17 attacks on the charge, some ridiculous. But anyway, I played against this guy's army where he was just spawning gaunt after gaunt after gaunt. And it was a super fun game. And to the point where I lost, but like I got to kill a lot of stuff and it looked like a fun list to play. So I was like, I'm going to build this list and play it.
There are lots of skulls.
You've got a lot of
skulls.
And
so I built that list and I was building towards it. And one of the things I ran into was, well, now there's so many gaunts on the table. How do I know, and so these guys are all facing backwards and these guys are, and what an elegant solution he came up with for that. I would have to think about a way you could do it for Tyranid. You could literally do it with a magnet underneath and different colored rock on each base or something.
Or a piece of their carapace. Like they used to have, I don't know if you still have them, but the glands. Like you could have different magnetized glands. But last time you talked a lot about immersion in the Aeronautica Imperialis episode. And I think that's cool because it does the immersion, right? A lot of people do it with movement trays, which I've never been the biggest fan of. I understand people use them. But just like he can see it, he's got the immersion in there and he can switch it up. So it's awesome.
Yeah, it's all thematic. It looks great. Great job. Great job to everybody that we talked about in this.
And everybody we didn't talk about too. There's a lot of really good stuff out there.
You just talked about how the Facebook group is kicking off again pretty strong. And we're getting new people joining.
Yeah, very consistently.
The one thing I'll recommend there is, again, and I think I say this almost every time, if you are inviting friends to join, just tell them about it, have them join, because we automatically decline anybody who hasn't filled out the questionnaire, and people you invite directly don't get the questionnaire, and for whatever reason. And so they're probably just getting auto declined. So the only way to get in is to answer the questions. Even if you answer them wrong, if you put some effort into it, it's fine. You'd be surprised how many people answer them with question mark, and I'm like, okay.
You're clearly a human.
It's a person.
We have stopped, but if you notice, our group doesn't get a lot of spam, doesn't get a lot of bots because we do exactly that. So we're going to take a short break. We're going to come back and we're going to launch into games played and hobby progress. We'll be right back. All right, and we are back. We're going to kick it off with a little bit of Workbench, hobby progress.
Hobby progress.
I've gotten distracted from, as is typical. I still have not finished my Ash Waste Nomads because if you've followed me when I post to the Facebook group, when your wife comes to you and says, I really want to get started on my Night Lords, you drop everything and you help her get started on her Night Lords.
Yep.
So we spent several days assembling Chaos Space Marines, which was interesting because I went into all of my extra sprues. Now I have tons of Chaos Space Marine sprues at this point. I actually just rebought a bunch through Herrick Games. Plug. But I did. You are a sponsor of the show, so I did buy a bunch more through you. But before I even went that route, I had a bunch of Chaos Space Marine sprues where I'd maybe clipped off one or two things because I need another Melta gun for this guy or whatever the case may be. So I was able to actually put together two squads of Chaos Space Marines, along with the I don't remember what they call the Aspiring Champion that goes with them. And we spent some time kind of, real lot of thought went into, okay, we want to make them look kind of Night Lordy. So we went with a lot of the very horned heads
nice.
And this kind of stuff and how we pose some of them. And then, and I was working right alongside Shell, who was like, I have glue all over my fingers. I'm like, welcome to the hobby, babe.
This is her first time engaging in the modeling side of the hobby, correct?
In a long time.
Okay,
she did put together Eldar Guardians many, many moons ago.
Yeah.
But this is her first time, and she has been I'll get into this, but we also used, I can't remember the set that it came from, but there was a particular Chaos Champion that he's really really well decked out, not in Terminator armor or anything. We built a list for her first. That was where we started from.
Yep.
And then just 1,000-point list. And then what we did was, I took this guy and I'm like, well, what did you think about this guy as being one of your aspiring champions? She's like, I really like him, but he's way more detailed than this other guy. I'm like, well, let's add some more to this guy. And I go, maybe he's his little brother and he's not as accomplished. She's like, yeah,
he's still aspiring.
Yeah, she was coming up with the whole narrative for the guys and everything.
Oh, that's awesome.
It was really fun. And then, she wanted them led by a Sorcerer and Terminator armor.
Classic.
Yeah. Out of stock, which we'll talk about this coming up.
Yeah.
Out of stock, been out of stock for a while. I go through all my pile of opportunity and no, I don't have any of them. But you know what I did have was I had put together a Terminator in Sorcerer and Terminator armor. And I had themed him after Tzeentch, he had a Tzeentch head that I'd taken from this and blah, blah, blah. And I was like, well, I got this guy, but I've never used him and I don't see myself using him. All right, let's pop this off, pop that off. Let me pop his head out. Oh, his head doesn't really come out. All right, let me dig it out with these clippers. And so we chop this guy to pieces and then we put him together and Shell was like, oh, well, I said, what can we do to make him look more sorcerer? I go, what if, and I had a half-used box of a Tzeentch, the chariot with anyway. There's
Burning Chariot of Tzeentch.
Yeah, but there's one of them is a model, a pink horror guy with a book. And I was like, what if we cut off the arm of the pink horror and he's holding the book and we just stick that as the pole that's holding up this book. This guy's so awesome.
Yeah.
He literally has a demon hand
holding his book.
And I had to, clip the demon hand and adjust the book a little bit so it was at the right angle, but that came out great.
That's
She's
cool.
like, yeah, but he's, it'd be cool if he had a robe. I'm like, you know what? I've got this I've got this plastic 30K Armin, and I think I've got like 2 of them floating around here somewhere. And I find one, I'm like,
perfect.
What if we cut off his cloak and I chop out this piece and we make it like the, hanging down from his rear. You can see, hanging down from his rear as kind of like the bottom part of a cloak / I don't know what you call them, like a skirt, cape kind of thing.
He's got a
tabard.
toga.
Yeah, like a tabard. And so we figured out how to fit that on it. By the time we were done with this guy, I was like, I'm really proud of this guy. Like, this guy looks like, she was like, I want this head because it's got the huge horns on it. And I want that. And I'm like, all right. And
leaning into the theme. That's awesome.
Yeah, he came out awesome. Like, and she's really excited about it. And then we had been gluing them just to regular bases. And she's like, well, what are we going to do for bases? She has some Night Lords that were painted by Caleb Wissenbeck for her kill team.
Right.
Which that's a whole other matter because those don't match a kill team anymore. And there's certain things in there she likes. Like she likes like the possessed and this kind of stuff. But they're all on the like industrial bases from Necromunda. And she goes, well, I want all these guys to be on these same bases. And I said, well, I don't think I have many of those bases left. Now I go out there, and as it turns out, like I found Doug had a bunch of those. I found that out later.
Are they in 32s or 25s?
32s.
For Necromunda bases?
Yeah. Well, they didn't sell them they weren't the Necromunda. There was like a base they sold that was like that technical base that you could get in 32.
It was a pack. It had a whole,
there's like 40 mil too.
It was a Zone Mortalis base.
That was it. The Zone Mortalis bases. But it was too late. We'd already moved forward at that point. She had seen, the Sorcerer in Terminator Armor was on a base I had created. And she goes, well, this base looks great. Why can't we just do this? And I go, that's quite easy to do. I had done a tutorial many years ago on this where I chopped up some of the terrain pieces that had come out, added sand to them, sprayed them, boom, perfect bases.
Yep.
And I said, as a matter of fact, I've still got a whole bunch of them here that I had popped off other models. And then I go, and my Chaos Marines are going to be on different bases than that. And I've got a whole bunch of Chaos Space Marines that I painted up before that quite frankly just don't match up to the new models. The old CSM are just not even close to the new Legionnaires. Yeah. And I was like, I can't even use these guys anymore. Like, they're embarrassing.
Their bases are still good.
But the bases are still good. Pop, 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 pop. Here's 20 of those bases.
Smart,
So I've got probably 40 of those 32 mil bases. And then we built, and I had a few 40 mil bases as well. And so we put all those on.
Army right there.
Yeah. And then we got to assembling a Rhino that I had, a Predator that you'd given me a while ago. And I was looking for Chaos Predator or a Predator. Out of stock. Yep. But fortunately, you know who did have it?
There's a
Herrick Games. You actually had one.
Yeah.
So we bought that one. I had the one that Josh had given me a long time ago. We still have to chop off the ends and put on, like, she loves the
dragon.
You put the dragon heads you put or gargoyles or whatever they're supposed to be. She loves that. Like, even when she was building her Rhino, she's like, well, I don't want to overdo it on the spikes, but I want to do that. And so we had like a whole discussion about, what do you want to do? And she's like, well, I want to use these chains, and I want she's into it.
That's awesome.
Yeah, she's into
fantastic.
it. And so I came back. I've gone somewhere. We assembled the first one. She learned how to assemble it, made a few mistakes I was able to correct quickly. By the way, good reason to use super glue, not plastic glue, just saying. But anyway, then I came back and she had pretty much assembled the second one already. Now she ruined a good shirt of hers. I'm like, don't wear a good shirt. She's like, I wish I'd known.
You got your airbrush closed. You got your glue closed.
So long story short, we've assembled her entire army at this point of 1,000 points, which is a great starting point. Yeah. And we'll see where it goes from there. She may determine she needs other things. She added some possessed, and there's another unit in there.
Chosen?
Go over there and look. That wasn't chosen. But anyway, we've got quite a few models. So now comes the hard part, which is painting them. So I've looked at what Caleb has done, and I've talked with Caleb. Caleb still owes me to come down. We just have not ever been able to connect, but he still owes me for a donation I won his time on to come down and help paint. And originally it was going to be sisters, and now it's going to be Night Lords, and he's like, I'll help you sisters and Night Lords. Just setting like how he did it, and at least to get a close approximation of, because I mean the stuff he did.
It's going to stand out, but
no,
it's a tutorial on how
he
you
hand
do it.
painted the Night Lords logos on all the shoulder pads.
With the lightning effects and everything too. So.
Daddy can't do that. I can't freehand a
Just
skull.
a couple of triangles, Carl.
Yeah. Yeah. Anyway, so okay, super excited. But the other thing is, I have to reiterate, the Chaos Space Marine kits are just awesome.
Yeah,
just awesome, and leaps and bounds ahead of where the last ones were.
Yeah, it's a nice evolution.
Yeah. And if she wants, by the way, any Raptors or whatever the other guys are, I have a ton assembled, because there was back edition or two ago, there was like a whole list of like, what if you took all Raptors? I'm like, yeah, let's take all Raptors. And I assembled like 30 of them.
Never got across the finish line though. So future opportunities.
Story of my life.
That's why it's a closet of opportunity.
So you know what else I did? I assembled a warband for Warcry because you guys have been talking about Warcry so much. Founded at Herrick Games, the Jade Obelisk. The Jade Obelisk warband, which I just think looks really cool.
Yeah.
I have no idea how they play.
I don't know what they do either. But
No clue.
I look forward to playing sometime.
I'll figure it out. I assembled Tyranids from the Leviathan box set. I stayed away from the Gaunts at this point because I really don't need more Gaunts in my life. Even though I know they're newer and they look cooler. It's like,
they sort of kill your soul.
I've painted my first army. I completely painted was a Tyranid army, so I'm well aware of. Oh boy, here we go.
It's a horde.
Yeah, it's a horde. So okay, so I've got those assembled because I want to just continue to. And we had a long discussion about, I could paint so much better than now. Do I still want to?
Yeah.
I think I'll just slowly evolve things in and out.
Yeah.
I purchased Bellicor, who I love. That model is amazing. Did not get it from Herrick Games. Sorry, bud. I used my Amazon points for that one. But unfortunately, after I bought him, I realized can't really ally him with CSM anymore.
Still such a cool model.
There is a way to kind of cheat it and get him in, but you have to take Abaddon to do it. And it's like, that's a whole lot of points in two models.
Or you can just play with cool people who are like, hey, that's
cool. Yeah. And so I kind of want to wait and see what happens, because I also don't understand how he really thematically works with a demon army. I mean, I have to do some research and wrap my head around it a little bit. But anyway, I'm still going to assemble him because he's awesome.
It's like maybe it's easier to have him as a demon army that you're then just bringing in a bunch of Space Marines. I don't know
how that works, but I have a creature caster wannabe Bellicor as well, and Shell was like, I like this guy for my demon prince. I'm like, he's all yours.
Done.
So cool. So everybody's happy in the Tuttle household. The other thing I did just in time was assembled and painted an Alderi Aeronautica Imperialis force.
Yeah, you busted those out so fast.
That was like one day.
Yeah.
Yeah,
it's like the same day you bought them.
They were done before they discontinued them, which was 2 days later after our show dropped. Perfect timing, of course.
I can't believe that.
I'm super bummed, but that doesn't mean we can't play with them.
Oh, it'll still get played.
Yeah, you and I, and
Did you get the Forge World bombers, the Phoenix bomber?
Did not.
Okay.
I did.
Did not.
I picked them up. I can share them.
Okay.
I really enjoyed.
Might be worth
Dead
getting
games.
one, but yeah.
I have to say I've enjoyed playing Dead games a lot with GW. Sorry, Mike is too far. Just because there's no creep, there's no launch. You just get to know the game. I've been playing a lot of Warhammer Fantasy over the last year and a half, and so playing Dead games, I think, is underrated in terms of how fun it is, especially with your friends and stuff. And so I've really, really enjoyed it.
Interesting.
It's such a fun casual game anyways.
It is. It is. It's just, I'm hoping against hope that at some point
there's a 40k
epic comes back. Again, completely understand why they're focused on 30k initially.
Right.
Like it just makes sense from you can only build so many things at once. If they came out with Imperial Force and Orcs, then Tyranids would be like, where's our Tyranids? And Eldar would be like, where's our Eldar? I get it. Hopefully the game does well and opens doors for the future.
I'll be surprised if we see every faction ever come to Epic. But I really do hope Epic 40k comes back when we get, at least some of the major players in there.
Yeah.
Especially on the Titan side.
Yeah. So I still need to complete the bases, but heck, we could still use these rules for our campaigns and stuff.
Yeah, absolutely.
And the thing is, I painted them to match Sheldar's, the Sheldar, Shell's Eldar.
Yep.
Which is a Dave Paints out in Europe, in the UK, did those for me initially, but I've got like that pattern down, so I know how to paint them, and I think they came out great.
Yeah.
I think it came out great. I'm super stoked. So we'll play a few games with that whenever we decide to.
Yeah, sounds great.
I keep struggling. Like I see Shell kind of moving away from her Eldar, and I'm like, Eldar would be pretty cool. And it's fully painted.
I've had 3 Eldar armies over the years, and when their codex is probably going to be about a year out from now. But so when it does,
who knows?
I'm drawing my line in the sand of like, when that happens, I'm going to jump in. So
Josh, what have you been working on?
Yeah, so similarly, been building some stuff. One thing I really noticed is that my terrain collection, I've had a lot of boxes of opportunity sitting for several years now, but I want to be able to have 2 full tables of 40K that I can play at my house for when I host. Just host friends over and have a mini game day. I don't have as much game space as you do here, but I've got...
you got a good space though.
Yeah. We can definitely get some stuff going. So I been working on the box of ruins. It's the Sector Mechanicus ruins and the Sanctum, which is the kind of cool. It's a huge building with the 4 statues attached to it. And then I also have a Basilicum, which I haven't started on yet. But I pulled my 40K terrain box out of the attic, which had just been thrown up there because of the move a couple years ago. Which shows how long it had been since I actually played 40K. But I had some 3D printed stuff that did not survive well from the heat storage in the attic. So a bunch of warp stuff there.
What of the stuff that was printed that you said didn't work? Because now I'm a little concerned because I've got stuff in the garage. What was it? The thin walls? Was it just everything just warped from that?
It was all thinner things. I had a couple unpainted Titanicus buildings, which got the worst of it because they're smaller scale and thinner walls because they're hollow buildings, and they were definitely warped. So I just ended up tossing those ones. No. But I mean, my attic doesn't get crazy hot because I live right next to the ocean, but it's hot enough for PLA printed stuff. A lot of the small stuff did totally fine, but there was enough things that, and then also having a barbecue at my house in a couple of weeks for my birthday, that is like, I want to be able to have 2 full 40K tables going at the same time.
Nice.
So, and it was just good motivation to get boxes that I bought from Skye like 3 years ago that I'm finally getting around to building now. So,
you guys make me feel like a dealer.
By the way, I have
it's free, kid.
You are. It's just legal. I have those alpha tables too. If you need them,
at least one of those would be perfect. Yeah, nice.
Super cool.
Okay. So in addition to terrain, you and I split Leviathan.
We did.
So I got the Marines, you got the Tyranids out of that.
And I got to tell you, those Marines are so cool looking.
Yeah.
And this is the trap I fall into every time. I'm like, man, look how cool they are. And they get all these toys to play with. And then I play them and I'm like, I like them, but I'm just not like super like them.
Yeah.
Yeah. But
you don't get the monsters.
But I'm kind of jealous, man. They look so cool.
Well, Marines aren't going anywhere.
Nah,
so. You can always come back.
It's not going to happen.
Yeah. So anyway, I started assembling these, and I specifically focused on assembling the models that will make the combat patrol out of them. So it's at least a good place for me to start with the Primaris contingent of the Sharkadons.
Yeah.
Because I'd waffled between a few things. I'd started working towards a boarding action list. I started working towards a 1,000-point list, and then Leviathan dropped. And I was like, okay, I'm going to start there, and then I'll open up things into those other options.
And we'll talk about that a little later too.
Yeah. So as you can see, I did a couple just fun little conversion things on every model that I built for that. Because with the Sharkadons, their lore is that it's a scavenge fleet. Like a big part of the reason I didn't jump into Primaris with them is because of their lore, is that they're so kind of ragtag out in the outer reaches of the galaxy. Mm-hmm. They're just scarce on equipment, scarce on ammo, not a lot of bodies. So them just getting the Primaris treatment didn't make sense to me from the gameplay standpoint and the lore standpoint of that. But
what about Spears of the Emperor, though? I mean, that's kind of an interesting, that book by Aaron Dembski Bowden is kind of an interesting introduction to how.
Yeah, part of what motivated me to actually make that change happen.
Those are called torchlight fleets, right? In the fluff?
I don't
Something
that might be the case.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's funny. Aaron actually just reached out to me the other day. He's like, "Oh, I heard the show's back and blah blah blah." I'll let him know we talked about it a little bit.
Here we are.
That came up,
Yeah.
not intentionally,
Naturally.
But, yeah.
Yep.
Was it the models are just too cool though? The new Terminators. You're just like, I gotta.
God, they're so
Part of that, like,
that captain is so
he's
awesome.
so epic.
So I did just small things to kind of represent the I don't know, the Sharkadon's approach to Primaris.
Yeah.
So I still like I added a lot of studs onto shin plates and things like that to carry over that Mark V
That makes
heresy
sense.
effect that I had, because all my tactical Marines are Mark V tactical Marines. Like,
Right.
so I had a couple Mark V heads on there, did a bunch of like studs on shoulder pads, added a bunch of studs to shins or like power fists on the Terminators, things like that. So just adding that kind of cohesive.
How do you add the studs? Like, what are you doing?
They're HO scale rivets for model train stuff.
Yeah.
So each one is individually cut and added on there. But
Did you have a bunch already from previous?
From previous iterations of building models
Very cool.
for that force. So yeah, I had them on hand, which is great. And it's a little cohesive tie-in of Primaris and the non-Primaris contingent that, will not only with the paint scheme, but also just the visual aesthetics will kind of all, it's the room that ties the rug together.
Yeah.
The other cool
Rug
thing,
that ties the room together.
I get you.
That's the one. Yeah.
Unless it's a really expensive rug.
I think the other cool thing about that is like they're monopose, right? So they're hard to convert in general, but the conversions you did are like individually placing rivets isn't necessarily easy, but it's not like cutting off an arm or a leg, and the heads are all single pieces, so those are easy to swap
did a
out.
lot
But making those
a lot of head
small
swaps.
adjustments to something, I mean, like even when I was talking about the Chaos Space Marines, you make small adjustments. I'm going to turn the head this way,
Right.
or I'm going to, Shell did some interesting poses. I was like, oh, I wouldn't have thought to pose that guy with his arm back like that. That looks really cool,
Yeah.
and so even small adjustments like that can make a huge difference.
So I did some little small customization to everything except the librarian, because that model he's got so much
busy
detail on
anyway.
it as
Yeah.
it is. So I was like, he's good. I don't.
You talk about the
I don't touch him.
Sharkadons, they'll go on a quick tangent. My kid, I introduced them to Jaws a number of years ago. They are not they do not like horror movies. So I sat with them and I said, we're going to watch Jaws. I go, it's kind of scary, blah, blah, blah. We watch it, but I kind of told them, okay, scary part's coming up. Like I warn them. They love that movie now. Like they love that movie to the point where they bought like this stuffed animal that's a shark and they named it Richard Dreyfuss.
Nice.
Anyway, shark related.
Sharks are fun.
Shark adjacent.
Who doesn't like Sharkadons?
Speaking of sharks, so I've also been working on just more of the Primaris stuff in general. So mostly it's been trying to finish a second Assault Intercessor squad, because I started the Primaris part was Kill Team. So had a handful of extra models that I already built to kind of fill out Kill Team. So I had some extra Assault Intercessors built up there. Blade Guard, one of those for boarding action specifically. So I built 3 Blade Guard. I have 3 more that I can throw in there, and that'll be a pretty good unit for that. And then the Primaris Apothecary, just got that guy. He's primed and base coated, so he's starting to go. And then I talked about the terrain already, and the big thing was the half of a boarding action set. So it's a Into the Dark Kill Team box of terrain, half of what you need for boarding action. I built, magnetized, and primed, so I don't need to do all the Lego capping, which makes it way easier to set up by just magnetizing the walls to the pillars. And I built half and Brian built half. So we were like, oh, together we can actually stick this all together and play a game. And then we ended up not playing boarding action anyways. But
unfortunately, Brian did his magnets the other polarity, and now everything.
We did it in a way that polarity doesn't matter, which is actually pretty cool. So I'll share more about that after I paint it, because it'll
be cooler.
It'll
then.
be cooler then. Yeah.
Right on.
Yep.
Right
So that's me.
All right. What about you, Skye? What have you been working on lately?
Yeah. So a lot
other than old Warhammer Fantasy 7th.
Yeah. I won't go into non-Warhammer 40k stuff I've been doing, but I have not done anything in 40k for a number of years.
Okay.
And so I got the Leviathan box early, which was nice, and decided that I was going to do the Primaris Marines, resurrecting an old chapter that I did when I was like 14, when I first got into Warhammer. And I remember distinctly like trying to paint them Blood Angels.
I remember you telling me this.
But I painted them orange, and then I put like this nasty chestnut ink wash over them, so they just look horrible. But I remember just being so proud of those as a kid. I spent like a weekend freehanding the word fists because they're called the Blazing Fists. And so like I wanted to bring them up, but obviously I'm a lot better painter now and I know how to airbrush. Hopefully I'm a better painter now. So I assembled almost all of the Leviathan Tyranids, got to the gaunts, did 10 of them, and then they killed me. I was like, oh, there's 10 more of these, and then there's the smaller ones, and each one is 4 pieces. I was like, they look gorgeous, but I can't do this right now.
Where do you paint them?
Yeah. And then the other thing I realized as I was doing because I had Leviathan before they released like the new combat rules. It's like, oh, the whole Leviathan set is a playable army. You don't actually need all the models from Leviathan to play. Was it Combat Patrol?
Yeah, there's Combat Patrol and then some for both factions in the box.
Yeah, and so that's really motivating because it's like, oh, I just have to paint 5 of the Infernus Marines, the Terminators, which I want to paint no matter what, and 2 other dudes, and suddenly I can be playing 40k again. So that's on the 40k universe. That's what I've been working on, is resurrecting that old bright orange chapter.
Yeah, that paint scheme is awesome and it turned out really well. I definitely have an affinity for orange when it comes to miniatures.
Yeah,
but you've also done a really nice job with it. So
I love painting orange. I don't know what it is. It's just a fun color to paint.
Orange is not my favorite color, but I've painted more things orange than for whatever. I like it.
Cool. Let's leap into games played then.
Yep.
And I was supposed to play a game with Aaron. I went to a family reunion up in Lake Tahoe over the last weekend, and my game got delayed because we were prepping we brought my buddy Doug's kids with us. My buddy who passed away. We're kind of helping out with there. So got a little delayed, but Aaron and I were just talking today. We're hoping to get together tomorrow or Thursday to play in the evening.
Nice.
So, and you were warning me, like we were talking about playing 1,000 points, but you were saying you might want to
start smaller,
rein it in and start smaller. So I'm going to reach back out to him and go, let's go 500 and start there.
Yeah, 500 or Combat Patrol, I think is
just to work it out.
Sweet spot to just work the kinks out. Yeah.
Right on. All right. So what about you though?
Yeah, so I played a game. Skye hosted over at Herrick a kind of game day for Leviathan Day as people were picking up their boxes. There was 40K on tables, which was great to see. And I played a game against Craig, who's one of our local guys. Super nice guy, really talented painter, really fun opponent to play against.
Is Craig one of the guys that we played?
You met him at Adepticon.
Yeah.
He didn't play with us there, but you did meet him at Adepticon.
Who did we play at Adeptus?
Was that Ivan?
That was Ivan. Ivan and John. Yeah.
Okay. Anyway, he's good.
Yeah, his stuff is amazing.
Yeah.
Craig's is also good. I don't think he's won a Golden Demon, but he's very talented.
Heck with Craig. Ivan
he won not a Golden Demon, but he won a painting award at Adepticon and then won at KublaCon as well.
Yeah,
for his fantasy army.
He's a really good painter also.
So he's also a 3D sculptor. He does the 3D sculpting on his models and prints them out, and then does it in his army because a lot of the fantasy stuff is out of print, so he just does it himself.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it makes me sort of angry to play against him because he's such a great guy. It's so fun. And he's just like, oh yeah, I just whipped this together and threw it up.
A couple triangles.
Yeah, thanks, Craig.
Yeah, a couple triangles in Blender, even easier.
The joke there for people who haven't listened to the show for a long time is our friend Bryce, who's been doing an awesome job painting his Tyranids.
Yep.
At one point, he painted Imperial Fist logo or
Dark Angels.
Dark Angels logo, or he's been painting these like by hand on the models. And I'm like, how do you paint it? He goes, it's just a couple triangles, and then you do this. Like, man, shut up.
Yeah, his Tyranids. So I'm like, how'd you paint that? He's like, oh, it wasn't that hard. Yeah.
He like hand painted an IC's logo on the shoulder pad of a guy he gave me one time, still floating around here.
Nice, yeah.
Like,
yep, that's just a couple circles.
Some people are just practice.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
Okay.
So anyway, we played a 500-point game. And I took the Necron list that I took the Combat Patrol units, but we weren't playing with Combat Patrol rules per se because Craig does not have everything required for the Sisters Combat Patrol because he doesn't have the penitent engine, and there's one other thing.
Well, you know who does. This guy.
You probably got a lot.
It's also unpainted.
Built, unpainted. So it was super fun game. This was obviously our first game of 10th edition because Leviathan had dropped that day. The way I really like to approach a new edition is I will read through the rule book, I will play a game, get a bunch of stuff wrong, and then read through the rule book again right afterwards. And then instead of spending a couple extra hours looking up stuff in that moment,
right,
I'm going to have a bunch of things fresh in my mind as I'm reading through the rule book that second time and be like, we did this wrong. We did this wrong. We did this wrong. There wasn't a lot we did wrong, but there was like 4 important things that I found after our game that was like, okay, Combat Patrol specifically has sticky objectives. I didn't realize that because the standard games of 40K don't, if you're using like the mission deck.
Right.
That's one of the alternate rules. So there's a bunch of just even the game in and of itself, depending what mode you're playing in, has different rules that it's using. So for me, it was just a really fun way to kind of break into the new edition. I had a super fun game. I was playing Necrons, so obviously I kept reanimating a bunch of dudes. Craig he was playing Sisters, which I had not actually played against a new version of Sisters in quite a while. I think the last game of Sisters I played was with Jody with his metal models, and this was probably 3 editions ago. So it was really cool to see how Sisters work on the table. The models are amazing. Craig painted them beautifully. But they have some mechanics where they can use miracle dice to resurrect models or units that have died. So I was bringing Necrons back. He's bringing Sisters back, and it was
the game dragged on.
It was a really long 500-point game, partially because we were looking up rules, partially because we were referencing indexes and
resurrecting.
We were both resurrecting units. So super fun game.
Everything died like twice, but then he ended up losing all of his models, and then everything on the Necron board except the Scarabs was back alive because the Resurrection Pro. It was a fun game to watch. I really.
So you were like playing 1,000 points because you had to beat each other twice.
Pretty much. Yeah, I think he brought a unit of Seraphon back 3 times.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
It was cool.
I couldn't table him because he kept bringing those Seraphon back. but it was a super fun game.
Interesting.
And then Brian and I got together, and this was Brian's first game of 40k 10th edition. We played a 1,500-point game.
Yeah.
And this was my Necrons against his Dark Eldar.
How long did that take?
That was a 5+ hour game. It was crazy how long it took.
Yeah.
Not because we were looking up rules in the rule book. I think we looked up 2 or 3 rules, like period, and we're pretty good on the rules. There was a few things that we had questions of, and we just double checked. But largely, this was time spent looking up stats and abilities and things in the indexes.
Which you didn't have the cards yet.
I didn't have the cards for because it'd been very hard to find the Necron cards specifically out of stock. And then
maybe you should just reanimate them.
So I did entirely too much. Necrons kept coming back to life a stupid amount.
When we were talking about this, you were talking about how they're almost probably too durable.
The list that I built is like, all right, I'm going to lean into reanimation protocols.
Boy, did you.
Boy, did I, because it was too much. And from a fun standpoint, I was like, okay, that's good to know. Like I will pull back on that because it's going to be more fun for me to bring a more variety of units that aren't just supporting kind of these other things. And I think it's going to be more fun to play against.
And this is what led to our discussion about the killing of Gaunts.
Right.
In that list, like that list was fun to play against. Even though I wasn't making a whole lot of progress, I was killing a lot of stuff. And at least I felt like I've killed a lot of stuff. Here, it's like you kill it and then it comes back and you're like, what am I even doing?
Yeah.
I think I remember from your guys' game, it reminded me of when the Necrons in 3rd edition when I was playing, when the way they beat Necrons was you
would phase out.
Yeah, they would phase out.
That was such
but you had to kill an entire unit at a time.
Yeah.
Right? You couldn't kill 3 here, 3 here, 3 here. It was this squad has to die, which I think is still viable.
Yeah,
right?
if the whole squad is wiped out,
then they can't
gone,
reanimate.
Right? It's more true than it has been in a few editions. Because now not only can you reanimate in your command phase, if you have a Resorb, you can reanimate in your opponent's command phase. And this edition, you can reanimate stuff that has died turns ago. So you can still keep bringing stuff back until you hit that maximum starting size. So turn 5, I had 2 units of 20 warriors.
Yeah.
That hadn't lost
and
anybody.
It's just you can reanimate 1 to 3 guys. It's not a reanimating on a 5+ it comes back.
Right.
It's
across the board. It's essentially living metal and reanimation protocols rolled into one. So every unit is getting D3 back. Warriors get D6 because they're the kind of the meat and potatoes. They're the endless legion of the army. But if they're on an objective, they're getting a D6. They're getting instead of getting a D6, they're getting a D3 plus 3. So they're guaranteed to get at least 4, if not 6 guys back. And then I had a Canoptic Reanimator nearby.
Play him before it drops.
Yeah.
I had a...
You know what? Good call.
Exactly. The Reanimator was close by too, so he was giving them an extra D3 every time. So it was like one turn, I think I got 8
What's your
back,
thing? I mean, is the key to just like take out the reanimator? Is there a way to get into him and take him out?
They're very easy to kill, so that's not a bad start.
Yeah.
They also...
I mean, I know I used to focus on like that ghost arc if I knew I was going to deal with, like, I'd be like, take this thing out before I bother with it.
I didn't bring a ghost arc because that's just more stuff that's leading to reanimations.
Jeez, you didn't want to go too far into
it. Which I already feel like I went too far, and that was unintentional, but it was good to figure that out. So yeah, next game I probably wouldn't bring the reanimator.
Okay.
And
I mean, there's probably an answer to each of these things, right? But it's about figuring it out.
I think the cool thing about a new edition is like all of the armies are like that.
Yeah, everything gets.
It's like
everybody's playing.
It's a reset, and so you can end up bringing what might be a like quote unquote crappy army for your opponent to play game. Then all right, this is the limit. Yeah. Like I'm not. This isn't as fun for them to play against, so I'm not going to go as hard into it. But I think it's cool that it's not just like you're not net listing it. You're figuring it out with your opponent.
And so Brian was playing Dark Elder, but he was playing a Coven specific list. So he was only really bringing half the codex there because he wasn't bringing Cabalot Wires. He wasn't bringing Witches. He wasn't bringing some of the heavier vehicles. It was really just Rex and some Mandrakes and a bunch of paint engines. I think he had like 8 paint engines on the board between the Kronos and Talos, which was a super thematic list, really fun. The damage output wasn't great, and obviously the Necron survivability with the reanimations, their durability, it was through the roof. So
those things didn't match up.
Those things didn't really match up, but we were playing the Leviathan mission card decks using the deck. So we were playing a primary mission, there's 5 objectives on the board, and then we were playing with the tactical objectives, which are the secondary. So that's kind of the Drunken Commander style. Like you've got 2, in this case, the mission rule we had gave us 3. So there's 3 secondaries you're trying to score each turn. Once they score, they're out for the rest of the game.
Right.
So on the point side, it was actually a pretty close game. On the model side, it was a different story, but it was like, I think the end of the game was 74-60, so we're relatively close.
That's not a total blowout.
And I think at the end of the game, Brian had, I'm trying to remember, I think he had a Raider and a paint engine left. So not a lot, but the points were pretty close there.
One thing I appreciate about these later editions too, in particular, is like the scoring of missions and that kind of thing. I remember in 4th edition, like it'd be like, if you have a unit that's under 50%, then it's equal to this many points. If you have a unit that's, and it was like, I would finish a game and I'd go, hey, Jason, who won? And it was difficult to even know what I'm working towards, because how do I know I don't know what's winning, and only in hindsight do I really see that, like, how detrimental that was to my ability to play the game.
Oh, sure.
All I focused on was destroy a unit, destroy the next unit.
Yep.
And that's really, the game has evolved.
The mission wise, I really liked. I really liked having that primary
mission. Isn't that their marketing tech? Did I just? I think I inadvertently drew their. Was not intentional. All right.
Combat Evolved. That's Halo.
Is that their? Oh, that's Halo. Yeah.
Yeah. Anyways, but the having that primary mission where it's just an objective game, and then this one had a little twist of you can actually burn objectives. So if you burn one that's in the middle, or you burn your opponent's objective in their zone, that's going to be worth more points at the end of the game that nobody's scoring.
Interesting.
So it's cool. It was really cool having that layer of the mission, of having the secondary missions that are changing every turn, but then having those primary missions which are really objective specific and positioning based. And it was a really fun way to play. It was just way too long of a game.
Too long.
I will definitely be leaning towards boarding action, combat patrol, and probably 1,000-point games for the foreseeable future. Until I get stats and abilities kind of more in the
makes sense,
memorized in my head. So
makes sense.
Yeah.
Makes sense. Skye, you played anything 40k wise, or you just mostly hosted for your stuff?
A lot of hosting. Got to watch that game, which was really cool.
Yeah.
I think the other thing that's cool is afterwards we're in the same like Discord group, and so you guys are going back and forth over the rules that were wrong, and so that was like there was your Necron Lord was just like tanking wounds for the entire time, and all of us were like, this seems a little bit broken, and then read it afterwards, like, oh, it is broken,
because it is.
But I'm the same way. When I like to just play it wrong, as long as we're consistent, and then you like, now I know a lot better from watching you guys do that than if we had spent 20 minutes looking it up and talking
For
to
sure.
the exigency, right?
For sure. I learn way more through making mistakes than I do.
Yeah. Keeps you in the game. Just play it through and then do a review of your rules afterwards. And then you'll be like, oh, okay, we did this wrong. And now that's just kind of locked in your head with that kind of repetition right there already.
Right.
Yeah. I'm hoping to play some Combat Patrol in the next week or two.
Nice. Awesome.
I know. All right. Well, listen, we're going to take a short break. We're going to come back and then we'll get into the meat of the show. All right, and we're back. And so now we're going to lean into 10th edition. Again, this is kind of our perspective and take on it. We're not really going to do a rule-by-rule breakdown, but we're going to talk about a few topics around it that I think are very interesting. And so, Skye, the reason we actually asked you here, other than you being a friend, and we think you have some good input,
Allegedly.
Listen,
No, good to have you.
one of us here thinks you're a friend. I'm not going to tell you who it is.
Switch couches.
Come here, big boy. But the reason I wanted you here was because you are also an independent hobby store owner. You do, you tell it. Like, your store is located in Boulder Creek, which is not exactly a hub of commerce.
It's not really a hub
it's
for
a small
anything.
town, kind of up in the Santa Cruz Hills. So how does your business work a little bit here? And then we'll kind of lean into how this deals with 10th edition.
Yeah. So I started the store like 4 years ago with my brother in Virginia in the back of his hardware store. At the time I had a full-time job in tech and I was just bored.
Yeah.
And from there it's grown. We moved up to the Santa Cruz Mountains. There was a massive wildfire, took out about 900, almost 1,000 homes in our community. After the wildfire, we came back and said, we want to invest in our community more. And so we said, is there some place where we can find, a cheap place to rent? So we found this upstairs place. I knew one person in the area. I knew Brian already. And I knew Josh lived in Felton. I was like, maybe I can convince one of them to come play a game with me. And for the first year, I think you probably picked up a couple orders where it was just piles of crap. We had no shelves, we had no tables.
Right.
It was you. I think you remember it. Yeah, a couple of times coming up.
The warehouse that you could play an occasional game at.
Yeah.
Now it's
perfect
now
for
it's a store with more.
It's booming, man.
More product than I've ever seen. It's insane.
Yeah,
every time I go in there, I'm like, Skye, why do you have this much product?
Yeah, you came last time. I had all the Kill Team Ashes of Faith stuff.
I was
So
going to kill you because I'm like, these are supposed to be hard to get.
Yeah,
You're sitting on like 6 of them.
yeah.
So by the way, if you're looking for Ashes of Faith,
Yeah.
And listen, I'm somewhat joking when I'm promoting the store. I mean, as I said, you are a sponsor of the show, so it's cool. But you really do a lot of your business online.
Yeah,
It's
we
your
do. We do
friendly local game
90%.
store that happens to be online.
Yeah.
And local for me.
Yeah.
And so I grew up in a place where we didn't have a game store, and I didn't have a community. And so as a kid, I just played my best friend every week for like 4 years. And I didn't have anyone to teach me how to paint. I didn't have anyone to teach me how to assemble. And so I really wanted, when I was doing this, had the idea for Herrick Games, it was just like, one, let's try it out. Let's give a ton to charity, but let's see if I can build a community and make it pay for itself. And so it's been really cool to see that growth. There's now actually a community up in Boulder Creek. I mean, Boulder Creek's only 4,000 people. We have a stop sign, not a stop light.
It is very small.
It's very small.
And it's tucked away.
Yeah. It's on the way to the Redwoods. There's lots of beautiful things to do.
But you have a great UPS guy.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Johnny. I know him personally. His favorite candy is M&M's. He brought 4,500 pounds of Leviathan up the stairs.
Oh my goodness.
But it's been really cool to see that. And sort of the ethos of the store is basically everything I like to use. I then go to the supplier and say, hey, can I sell your stuff? And I wanted to put it all in the same place because I always had the experience of, I want this one obscure thing. All right, do I meet the shipping minimums? What other stuff am I going to buy? And I was like, I'll just put it all in one place. And then I'll just, not be a jerk and just, long term, I'm not trying to feed my family. We're able to just sort of be chill about it and not really anal. And, so that, it's been growing. It's really fun. It takes up way more time than I thought it would, which everyone will tell you is the truth, but it's really taught me a ton.
Yeah. Okay. So that sets kind of the platform, right? You're independent hobbyist. You do a lot of business online. I know that in the past, especially recent past, there have been some struggles around. I guess I can't use the ashes of whatever it's called,
Ashes of Faith. Yeah,
ashes of faith as an example, because I know you're sitting on like 6 boxes now. but there have been cases where, hey, we're taking these pre-orders for this box, and then you have 40 orders, but you get in, I don't know, 5 boxes. Obviously you're shorted by Games Workshop on this. Yep. And I know that we've heard these stories about this from multiple, we hear them, we see people post about them online, this kind of thing. What has been your experience with that? And I'm leading towards 10th edition. We'll talk about that in a second, because there is a difference here. So what's been your experience with that in the last 6 to 8 months?
Yeah. The last 6 months have been very different. So there's been different phases the way that GW does their pre-orders. Mm-hmm. And it's so let me start off by saying I have 2 relationships with GW. One is I'm a complete fanboy. I've loved it since I was 14. Love it all. The second is a business relationship, which is much more nuanced.
Yeah.
And I will, as we said, I will be constructive in my criticism and honest and transparent.
Yeah. I think that's reasonable.
But if it ever appeals that I'm crapping on them, that's not my intent, because they're great. But there's different ways that they do pre-orders, and independent stockists are not told anything more than the public at all. Mm-hmm. Right. We find out what the pre-orders are for that week the same time at everyone else. I'm checking at 10 a.m. on Sunday morning. What are the pre-orders? Is it going to be a good week or a bad week?
Right.
And then that Monday they'll send us an email with all the prices. For the last couple of years, that was how that was. The Monday after that Sunday, we know the prices. And then the weekend, the Monday before the weekend that they go on sale.
Right.
Recently, so since Soul Shackle, I think, was the first box where they came out and they said, we're not allowing uncapped pre-orders. Before it was...
What is an uncapped pre-order?
Yeah, so before... In COVID days, you would do the pre-order, and then Monday morning you'd talk to your rep. Tuesday morning you'd say, I want 10 of this, 15 of this,
gotcha.
Whatever. Then post-COVID, but pre-Soul Shackle, it was tell me Thursday before pre-orders go live what you want. And then we will charge you. If you get an invoice from us on Friday, you're guaranteed to have that number of boxes sent to you. Guaranteed is still... Never guaranteed.
Guaranteed asterisk.
Guaranteed. Then with Soul Shackle, they changed it even more, and they said, all right, now we're doing allocations. Or not allocations, caps.
You're only allowed to order 10 of these.
Yeah.
Regardless of what you want.
Regardless of the size of the store, regardless of how many you want. So for instance, Soul Shackle, I sold 150 of those.
Yeah.
They gave me 3.
Yeah.
And
which is brutal to your bottom line, right?
Yeah.
That's huge.
Well, and the other thing is, those are really important for independent stockists. Again, I'm not feeding my family off of it, but most of our money comes from pre-orders. And it's the same. You look at Magic, you look at any of those things, it's the new hotness, right? That's the thing that's driving the revenue. And there was no communication about it, no reasoning behind it. I just talked to my rep. I can't escalate to
just out of the blue. All of a sudden you hear, hey, we're limiting it to this.
And there wasn't a statement about this is a temporary thing. There's still not a statement of whether or not it's a temporary thing.
So to be clear, you took 150 pre-orders, people expressing interest. You didn't take cash at that point.
Right.
Hey, I want one. Okay, I've got you down for one. 150. Sorry, 147 of you.
Yeah.
I only got 3 of these.
Yeah, and in fact, I should go back a little bit, because when they first came out with the rule, they said, hey, we'll give you 3.
Yeah.
Sell as many as you want over the weekend. On Monday, tell us how many you want.
And then
we'll ship it to you 3 weeks later.
Gotcha.
So if you remember on my store, for a lot of times I had delayed shipment.
Yeah.
Right, yeah.
And it was like, hey, we'll get enough in 2 or 3 weeks. And that actually worked.
Yeah, that's actually okay compromise, right?
Long as and I'm like, okay, I got more emails from people saying when is this going to ship, but it's whatever. Then the second Gallowfall, they told us the same thing.
Right.
We sold it over the weekend. Monday, they said, I emailed them like midnight Sunday, right? So I know he's opening it first thing in the morning. He's like, we're sold out. And then I had to refund 100.
So that's interesting. So they themselves were sold out at that point, even though they had told you. And again, this is fact. I'm not criticizing. Like, this is the statement of what has occurred.
Yeah.
Okay. So this has been the experience over the last 6-7 months.
Right.
And I know that this led to concerns in the community that, hey, Leviathan's going to come out. I'm not going to be able to get a copy of it.
Right.
Remember Indomitus?
Yeah.
We've seen this with what was the box for Adeptus Titanicus, right?
The Horus Heresy starter set.
The big one.
Yeah.
Right. I
The
mean, that
Grandmaster
thing's
set.
Yeah, the Grandmaster set. That thing sold out like crazy. Again, that's specialist games,
Right.
a little bit different, but still. I think there's a point of like expectation of the customer and then what the company's delivering, and then unfortunately you get stuck in the middle of this. And then you take the brunt of the heat as people are upset at you, and you're like, listen, I have no control over this.
Right.
I'm just trying to get you guys your toys. I promise.
Yeah.
But now Leviathan comes, and people are obviously excited, but reluctant to put their faith in, I'm going to get a copy of this thing.
Yeah.
GW throws a queue up on their website, but you get delivered 4,500 pounds of Leviathan. Like, I saw your store. Your store can't contain 4,500 pounds of Leviathan.
We had to move it off the porch because we thought it might collapse it.
Oh my goodness.
It was a warehouse again.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I guess the speculation on much of our part as customers, and maybe I don't know that you have any insight here. In fact, you probably don't, but we're all resources being driven towards Leviathan, which is a much larger scale release than any of this stuff that has come before. And that's why there wasn't the production resources to build this up. Now, again, the majority of this stuff is created in the UK.
Right.
Terrain, I think some terrain is done in China. Some terrain. Books are printed in China. But the models are created in the UK, and they, refreshing an entire line like this, launching a new game or a refreshed game, I should say, is probably more daunting than we really realize. As much as we can think about that, like, I've done enough large projects to go, there's a lot of factors coming into play here that they are probably experts at by now, quite frankly, but it's complicated.
And 40K has to be their biggest game that they have by far, right?
Yeah.
Everything combined, I assume just Space Marines alone are bigger than every other game they sell. I wouldn't be surprised.
I don't know if that's true anymore. But looking at the card packs.
Look at the card packs.
That stack of index cards? Yeah.
If you haven't seen the card packs yet, the Space Marine card pack
3
is
inches thick.
literally twice the size of every other card pack. Or in some cases, 4 or 5 times the size.
Way
but then the next largest, it is twice the size.
Yeah.
And it's insane.
Yeah, it's not even close.
So maybe that's true. Maybe lieutenants outsell everything.
That's why there's so many of them.
So, I mean, is it your take that that's probably what was occurring here? Or
I hope so.
Yeah, because it would indicate that maybe that spigot is now opened a bit.
Yeah.
And things are going to begin to flow again.
Yeah, I tend, I want to...
You want to believe that.
I want to believe that. And I want to hope for best intentions, right? And there are some things that, like, they're in their financials and stuff that they've released that make me a little bit nervous of saying that for sure.
Interesting.
And I mean, thinking about it from a business perspective, right? They sell to me, they're selling it at a discount. They sell it on their website, they get 100% of the profit.
Yeah.
So if you're trying to figure out how do we make more money with our existing resources immediately, pulling some of that back from independent stockists and putting it into your web store is a good business decision.
I would believe that.
Cut out the
I would
middleman, you get
believe
more
that
profit margin.
If it also, if the Games Workshop stores themselves, the Warhammer stores, were not short of these materials as well.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so there's a couple things that point me towards thinking that might not be the case. I think Leviathan only dropped 2 weeks ago, something like that. Yeah. So we haven't gone through enough releases yet, so I can say, hey, there's more. Like, we just had the Lion and Farsight drop this weekend, and those were still capped pretty heavily.
Interesting. Okay.
But the other thing I think to remember is that the production cycle for a model is like 2 to 3 years.
Oh yeah.
And so they were planning now in the middle of COVID, and they like doubled their business over the past couple of years, and they have not doubled their production capacity.
Right.
So you're looking at the end of 10th edition and all those the patrols, right? So why was the Lion released with Blade Guard veterans? It's because they had a bunch of extra ones that didn't sell. They were able to put it in a lame box because they could print the box really quickly,
right,
and just get them all out, and that's why it sold so much.
You know what? And that raises a really interesting point. You can only print so much. You can only produce so much product at a given time. And this leads me kind of my next point, which is, as I was talking to earlier, a lot of stuff is out of stock right now.
Yeah.
And this is a terrible time, in my opinion, for this stuff to be out of stock. You just launched Leviathan. You just launched 10th edition. You reset everything. People are excited about it. New players are joining the hobby. This is the perfect time for new players to join the hobby. Oh, I really want to do this. I want to get into this. I want to do Space Marines from Leviathan. Cool. Hey, I want a Predator. Oh, sorry, you can't get one.
Right.
Hey, I want to build up my force now. Sorry, this is out of stock. That's out of stock. Why is this stuff all out of stock? I mean, that could contribute to it.
Yeah.
I think part of it is, again, Games Workshop is going to be looking to bring new blood into the game, new blood into the hobby. So rather than focusing on those more peripheral units for existing armies, they're going to be focusing a lot on combat patrol boxes. Get people into the games, people trying, oh, you're coming back into 40K, you already have an army or two, but you want to try something new. Pick up this combat patrol.
And combat patrol is a great introduction to the game.
Yeah.
Without a doubt. I think finally,
right.
Like they used to release these battle boxes, but it was like, oh yeah, it's this. And I remember Blake and Ed from Life After the Cover Save, they had a great series for a long time, the Battle Force Breakdown, where they would go through and look at the high end and low end of the points in this battle force compared to this one, compared to that one. And I thought that was a great series that they did.
Yeah.
Back when I listened to the 40K podcast. I thought that was a great, if you could call them a 40K podcast at that point. They're done now, so I can make fun of them. And they're friends of mine. But I thought it was a great thing. But every time it was like, yeah, but this isn't actually a fully playable army.
Right.
And now, finally, they're like, you know what? You buy a
single box.
A single box, you have a fully playable army right now. The minute you want to modify that army, you're talking about not playing combat patrol anymore. And now you're talking about playing a game of 40K.
Right.
And okay, but now I have trouble expanding that force that I want to. Now, look, within 2 weeks is probably a little aggressive, especially for somebody new who's coming to the hobby and they've probably just got their stuff assembled and it's on a table unpainted, and that's fine.
Yeah.
And they're, they haven't discovered that. I'm walking through my own experience. I haven't discovered that part of the game yet, or maybe I never do or whatever, but as soon as you want to expand, you're going to run into that wall of I can't get the thing I want to get.
Yeah.
And it's some popular models that are out of stock right now, I'm telling you.
Yeah.
I think it happens I notice it more because I'm trying to sell stuff, but it happens every time there's a release.
Of course.
And I think there's one of the weird causes that probably you don't notice if you're not shipping out tons of this stuff is the boxes. Mm-hmm. The boxes are printed in China. We know that for a fact. And their boxes, they redo the box art almost every edition, every army iteration.
Sure.
And
in some cases, they've changed names of units here.
Right.
Chaos Space Marines are not just called Chaos Space Marines anymore. They're Legionnaires.
Yeah.
Right.
And it's not the Kill Team Legionnaires, which is a separate large box. So I think, and another thing is there's two tiers of products, right? There's ones that have full art boxes. Those are trade, what I would call, those are ones that I call it my rep and can get. And then there's direct only, which on the website has a little orange arrow in the corner. Mm-hmm. You have to go on the website and buy those. And those are in a non-full art box. And they just changed all of the art on those as well. They used to be white. Now they're black with the Warhammer. So they're doing all of this reboxing on all these products because they launched a new edition, and that contributes to it as well.
Interesting.
And then another thing, not directly related to this, but earlier what you're saying, what's the new Legione Imperialis?
Legions Imperialis.
Legions Imperialis. I was going to call it Aeronautic Imperialis because I was listening to the
30K
show.
Epic.
Yeah, 30K Epic. There you go.
Legions Imperialis.
L-I.
Maybe I'll spell it right on the thing this time we cover it.
It's interesting. I read about the beginning of that game, and the way that it started was there was one throwaway line about the Horse Heresy. So the original Epic was the first game set in the Horse Heresy.
Correct.
And the reason for it is the models. They said, hey, we have the production to do one model. And they said, why don't we do a Civil War so we can have everyone play with one model?
That's right.
So it's the same thing.
That was the original Titanic
right?
box.
So you're getting rid of these SKUs, you're getting rid of the models,
Absolutely.
you're getting rid of the box art. It's the same thing with Horse Heresy, right? You only have to have one box and you can play 20 different legions with it.
Right.
Absolutely.
And
I mean, it makes all kinds of business sense.
Yeah.
Like without a doubt, it's lower risk, it's bigger reward.
Yeah.
You know, someday I hope they add 40K.
Me too.
I desperately Josh is super excited about it.
I've got Titans, I've got planes, and now I'm going to have tiny dudes and tanks. I am stoked.
I'm excited about it.
I'm less excited about it because I'd really like to go Xenos and you know, look, I say I'm not going to buy it, but come on.
Here's the thing, Carl.
Come on.
I know you're probably not going to go Space Wolves, but you already have Legio Mortis. I really want you to have some Space Wolves and Legio Mortis, and we can redo Battle of Prospero
Lunar Wolves, you
in
mean.
8 million. No, this was Space Wolves.
Oh, you want
Space Wolves and
Burning of
Space Wolves
Prospero.
and Thousand Suns.
Prospero.
Burning of
Yeah.
Prospero.
Yeah. I really want to do that.
I'm doing Iron Warriors if you couldn't tell.
Well,
Yeah.
listen, we'll see.
Yeah.
Because this actually leads to my other point, which is now they're like, hey, 30K Epic. What's it called again?
Legions Imperialis.
There you go. Let's call it 30K Epic.
30K.
Okay. Legions Imperialis releases, and I'm like, this close after your 10th edition launch? Like, isn't that biting into, like, as a customer, you only have so much, most of us,
Right.
even myself, only have so much. I say it like I'm freaking super rich, but I mean, I've been known to drop a lot of money on 40K stuff. I only
Dropping
have
Carl's
so
left and right.
cars and Formula One have taken away some of my money. It's definitely the Formula One thing. But it's taken away, you know, I can only spend so much at a given time to hit me with this over the head right after 10th edition. I have to imagine this takes a bite out of some of 10th edition, or maybe it doesn't because I can't buy that 10th edition stuff anyway that I want because it's out of stock.
Yeah, no, I'm actually surprised by that.
I felt that the timing was super aggressive.
It's fast. You know, we only got the preview. Where did we get the preview video? Was that Warhammer Day back like a month ago?
Yeah.
And so that was really fast. I thought that they were going to leak a lot. You know, they do that.
I thought
they do like
drips over a period of
not
time.
leaks because they're doing it officially, but
Right.
And I mean, they always do they do like a medium size release at the end of the summer.
Yeah.
And then something at Black Friday. And so I'm hypothesizing with no insider information that the old world is taking a lot of their production capacity.
Interesting.
And I think that the starter set is going to launch on Black Friday for that. I think it's that quick.
No.
Yeah. I think they're going to do a big preview for it at Nova because I thought they were going to do the Epic one at Nova and say, hey, this is coming out in 3 months. That's normal. Those
right.
All of those things, they normally come out within 3 months, right? Because they have those three large things that they release things at.
Yep.
So Epic coming out was like, whoa, you know, like you guys don't go to Gen Con, you know, why are you throwing this out there? And maybe because they were also having problems keeping all of the AI and AT-18 stuff in stock.
Clearly.
They were already like, well, we're going to rebox everything, turn it into this new game.
Or just get rid of it entirely.
Yeah. Like all the Xenos stuff.
Filthy Xenos.
But let's just
Perfect
get it out
timing
there.
on my episode. This one's going to come out. They're going to be like 11th edition.
It's already
like you
teased.
mentioned Old World. No, we're not doing that. But so I'm wondering if that was driven,
That would be interesting.
you know, by the boxes. So then they can rebrand the whole thing, get it all out, and it's sort of off their production schedule.
Interesting. But again, it's interesting because you're left to speculate on all this. And what's fascinating to me is this has always been an issue. I feel like the company could do a better job of just setting expectations.
Oh yeah.
If they had come out and said, folks, we know these box sets are going to be kind of limited,
right?
You know, and I know that's generating a lot of angst and we're people are going to be anxious for them. We're hoping to make them available maybe later or in separate, capacities, breaking them up, because we are ramping up for Leviathan and this big 10th edition release. I promise you the noise would level would drop.
Yeah.
Like the
100%.
noise level would drop tremendously.
Yeah.
And customers would be, when you're upfront with them like that, and I get that there's going to be those people who are loud and vocal no matter what, but for the majority of us who are fairly reasonable customers, I think we would be willing to go, oh, you know,
that makes sense. You can only
produce so much. I totally get it. You know, some people are gonna be like, well, why don't you just double your, your capacity?
Yeah.
Oh, just like
minutes.
that, huh?
Yeah.
Just like that.
Because look how many people have piles of opportunity. So if you don't get it immediately, even though pre-orders are
focus on these things that you may have already bought, and but I remember talking to a guy at Adepticon who was complaining about Games Workshop and the way they run it. I'm like, oh, so you're used to running multi-million-dollar international companies. Oh, I could run it better. Oh, okay.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I really.
And I recognize the hypocrisy of me saying,
yeah.
Oh, well, if they just did this. But I really do, as a customer, feel like, if you just tell me what's going on, then I can allocate my funds appropriately to know, hey, you know what? I really want Epic 30K Imperial.
Legions Imperialis.
You need a button with it.
I'll send you a soundbite so you can.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. No, that was wrong.
Objective
there
achieved.
It is. Okay. It'll just say
Legionis
Imperialis.
Yeah, but I truly feel like I could then budget myself accordingly, and I get to that there's like a fear of missing out thing that they're tapping into, but there's got to be a better balance there.
Yeah, it was really,
and I feel bad for folks like you who get stuck in the middle, and you're like, I'm just. Listen, I sold 150 of them. I'd love to provide 150 of them.
Yeah, it's like, it was so frustrating. So we lost probably $100,000 in revenue, a couple grand worth of refunds, because when you refund, I have to pay the transaction cost. And my wife and I were just like,
is this worth doing?
Yeah, literally. We said, this isn't, like, we're not doing this to become millionaires. We're doing it because, honestly, she's doing it because I love it.
You're in the wrong business if you do it.
Yeah,
she hates doing it. She told me.
It depends when she was happier after Leviathan.
Yeah. And by the way, your wife, I'm going to say this on the record, is awesome. She's super funny.
She's way better than me.
And she's super fun. Listen, as we said earlier, one of us is a friend of yours. The other one is a friend of your wife's.
But we said if they shorted us on Leviathan, we were gonna close. Up. Yeah, because it just wasn't worth it. I was getting so many angry emails, so many people saying like, "Oh, are you just like the death card thing?" They're like, "Oh, you took them and you're gonna sell them on eBay." I was like, "I don't care." Like, I don't.
That's really unfortunate that people would think that of you too, right? Especially after you've presented, like, I'm donating to charity. I'm here for the
I'm here to have fun with my friends. Yeah. And so, if there's just a tiny bit of transparency, I think their old corporations don't like being transparent. And I think they're worried about being overly transparent. Mm-hmm. Another example was with Cursed City, when it just like disappeared and they like pretended like they just ghostlighted us all or ghosted us all. And it like, oh, this never existed. That was really weird. It was weird. And it could have just been like, hey, we're running into production issues.
And then just it came back out of nowhere.
People are fine if you whatever.
Most of the box sets, right? Every Kill Team box set is released with all their individual components are released later. Right. And all of the terrain was the same in every single box.
Yeah.
So the Kill Teams
are upgrades, but then they release the upgrades.
They release the upgrades. They release the Kill Teams. All of those boarding patrols were just reboxing of existing models, right? The only new one was Farsight and Snickrot. But and so people were just trying to jump on it. So it created this like cycle where people were getting PO'd that they couldn't get it, but really they have a hoard of happiness in the back of their room, like full of stuff, right? They didn't actually need it, but people were worried about missing out on the new thing.
Yeah, I mean, it's that fear of missing out that they play well on.
If it's not in paper, it's
all right.
It will come back.
Yeah.
Unless it's Aeronautica, which will hopefully come back.
So, I have here in the notes, what has gone right this release for Leviathan? Well, clearly there are plenty of copies out there.
Yeah.
I imagine, I'm picturing in my head, there's copies sitting in your store right now.
Just one.
Oh, really?
Yeah. We did really good.
That's amazing. I know I've seen other game stores in the area. We have a plethora of them in this area.
Yeah.
That have boxes of them. So I mean, I think they sold out online, but they're like, I saw somebody post on Reddit, they're like, go check your store, and he showed like a picture of 12 of them stacked up. So it feels like the queue was set up to facilitate this, which got in the way of me trying to order other stuff for Shell's Army.
Yep.
By the way, or just see if it was available. They offered free rules, free data sheets.
Yep. Free indexes, free data sheets, free rules, free core rules.
Was that even available in 8th?
No, you had to buy the.
You
index.
had to buy the index.
Yeah.
In 8th. So okay, I think that's
huge departure, and I think is awesome.
Yeah.
And I think it might be pushed by some of the other competitors.
Of course it is. Of course it is.
I'm grateful for it. And so, yeah, I mean, I was looking at the rules. I downloaded the app. The app was mostly usable.
I was going to talk about that. The app,
way better. Yeah.
I've used it to create several. And is it bug free? No, of course not. I haven't run into a bug yet, but I know people have. You and I have worked in software.
Yeah.
There's a bug, huh? Shocking.
And a company that's not a tech company put out something that has some bugs in it. Wow.
No way.
Oh my gosh.
I've often said this. People are like, oh, they can't design an app. I go, they're not a tech company. I work for a tech company. We still put out buggy products. Like it just happened. The printed cards have come out relatively quickly, even though Josh can't get the Necron ones.
They're coming soon. I promise.
There were issues with the Aldari, in their power strength. Yep. They released FAQ already. All right. Okay. You can only do the dice once a phase, which really kind of resolves a lot of that issue.
Yeah.
Yet still leaves them, I think, pretty viable.
They did some points adjustments also already, which makes sense.
I mean, look, this is all now. Is this going to continue? I mean, people said they noticed on the app. Well, it says it's free for now. I think they're going to probably tie it into a Warhammer Plus subscription.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I think that's what the old one had.
Yeah.
To begin with. Okay.
Or
I'm a Warhammer Plus member.
They had the codes in the back of codexes and things like that.
Yeah.
So if you bought those physical books, you could unlock them digitally.
I think that may continue. Right. I think why
or if you have a Warhammer Plus, just get everything.
Yeah. Yeah. So I mean, I think we're off to a good start. Like I loved the beginning of 8th edition. I loved the indexes, which leads me to the codexes. And as if history teaches us anything, as the codex comes out, you get a series of, well, I don't have I still have an index army. I don't have a codex army. Right. It is not as powerful as the codex army. What do we think is going to, actually, before I jump into that, backpedal to Leviathan itself.
Oh, yeah.
Right. As a starter box.
Yep.
What are our thoughts there?
I think it's great. You have 2 combat patrols in the box, plus additional models on top of that. So if you get past your roughly 500 point combat patrol, you have that built, you have that painted, you've played and you want to expand, you've already got models in that box to come with you. Yeah. And some fun models, like some of the bigger bugs and the Ballistus Dreadnought, things like that, which are amazing models. And allow you to take that game to kind of the next step as a natural progression. Even if you're adding it to existing forces, like I already have a ton of Marines, you already have a ton of Tyranids, it was still worth it for us both to jump in and split that box because of the new models, because of the directions.
And I got to tell you, I have a ton of Marines too. And I literally looked at them and I was like, maybe I should just. What are you doing?
It's those Terminators, man.
I love Terminators so much.
You'll be able to get them
this week.
I'm doing Chaos Terminators.
Yeah.
The starter sets
I'm good
this week.
Yeah. New starter sets already on the way.
I got to tell you, kit bashing that Sorcerer and Terminator armor kind of cured me of it. I was like, oh, this is fun. I really enjoyed that.
Yeah, perfect. I think it was a good value. You get a ton of models out of that. You get the rule book, you get the mission pack. The rule book is above and beyond what the core rule book has too. Like this thing is thick.
330 pages.
That's a book.
330 pages.
Yeah.
The
200 pages of lore.
The 40k core rule book that is coming out is 270 pages, I believe.
Yeah.
So there's an extra 50, 60 pages in this.
It has the whole Tyrannic War campaign in it.
Yeah. That book, though,
Combat Patrol,
is 150 pages that's coming out. So it tells me, okay, I think they're duplicating some of the, here's the rules. The basic rules are in it, too. Here's the
core rules, some basic
Combat
lore,
Patrol.
and Combat Patrol.
Yeah, but I think that's pretty much covered by the Leviathan.
Yeah.
Which I really wanted.
This has Crusade, and then it also has the Tyrannic War Crusade specific stuff in there, which we'll get into.
Yeah. I mean, I wanted this book just for the art on the cover, to be honest with you.
Yeah, it's cool.
But then they just announced, okay, we're going to release the A5 version
Yeah,
of the core rules. Which I need. And everybody needs. Like how precious were those little books that came with
the 5th edition mini rule book?
Not even, 5th, and then beyond Macragge it was Blackreach.
Yeah.
Those books, man.
Yep.
Dude, I loved that book. Are you kidding me? Like that was so nice to carry around.
Yeah.
And the other interesting thing about the rules in here, when you get to the core rules, the page numbers change to the core rule page numbers, so that if anybody's talking to you about core rules from any copy of it, you're talking about the same
page numbers,
which is really nice.
That actually, I was, that came from the fantasy 8th edition fantasy books. They all had them the same, and I thought it was really cool because I can look it up in my little one or that one or the core book or on the app, and you're like, it's on page 13, and you're like, oh, it's always on page 13.
I am gonna grab that small book just because, as much as I wanted this and I love it, I'm like, I don't want to lug this thing around.
Yeah, Leviathan, it's 10
aptly
pounds.
named.
Yeah, I was very happy saying Leviathan as I was showing all of the boxes in our store.
It's a fitting name.
10 pounds, 72 models. And there's actually, I saw some people asking, there's rules in the assembly instructions in Leviathan for those forces to make them equal.
Yeah.
The rules are different in that. So you could buy it with, like when I was 14, I could have bought it with my best friend. We could have played 2 equal forces because the rules are different in that set, which I think is awesome.
When I got into this game, I bought the Battle for Macragge set, and I took the Marines and David Noble took the Tyranids. And then like immediately, like we played through the intro scenarios. It was a great intro scenario system. It's like, okay, play this one. This is how the guys move. They just have to move here, and it stepped it up each step of the way. But then it was like, well, and now you're done with these forces unless you want to go buy more stuff. Right. And now I feel like, as you guys have said, you and a friend can immediately begin playing the game.
Yeah.
It's a much better
And
intro.
last episode, you and I had talked about, like, let's play the combat patrols that come in there. So you were building towards the Tyranids, I'm building the Marines, and let's actually take it for a test spin.
And I do think that, like, this leads into how they're releasing combat patrol boxes, which is just the way to go. We talked about that already. So I think their mindset is in the right order here. I think their production capacity is trying to catch up to where they've changed things to go.
A lot of those combat patrol boxes haven't come out yet either. Yeah. Like some of them are existing and some of them are not. So there's still production and resources being allocated to the creation of those combat patrol boxes.
Yeah, without a doubt. And so that led me to kind of what was coming next. And then as I preemptively jumped in, I think you're going to see, I think Space Marines will be the first codex to drop. It seems to always be.
I think they've
did the calendar, right?
Calendar,
did they already?
Space Marines and I think Tyranids are the first
makes
two.
Sense.
Makes sense
in support of
in the box.
And then it's Adeptus
Necrons
Mechanicus and Necrons.
Mechanicus coming very shortly thereafter. So I'll get both my codexes this year, which is pretty crazy.
Thanks for being a jerk.
Yeah.
It was nice. Chaos was at the forefront for a little bit. I kind of appreciated that. It's fair enough that we're passing the baton on.
Was that Dark Vengeance when they were in there?
Yeah, and that was the guy that I made shells.
That's awesome.
The Dark Vengeance. I'll show it to you.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, there's going to be a period of adjustment if history tells us anything, where I have a codex army and I have a index army, quote unquote index army, and I'm a little outclassed for a while. And boy, I hope my codex answers some of these things. I think it's the nature of the beast.
But then there's also been a historic codex creep where later codexes tend to be better books from a competitive or efficiency standpoint. So
and then there's always one that...
The fact that I'm getting both my books very early, like this year, means in 3 years, maybe they're not as good. But,
maybe we could beat you in 3 years.
I mean, I don't care. I'm not I took best overall to tournament and I hung up my competitive.
Good call.
Trophy.
There was a time where I kind of wished, like, man, what if we could just go back to Index 8th edition, and like it was a beautiful time.
It's a great time.
You can.
Okay, Dead Games guy. You know what? I don't need to buy anything else. What do you think about that now? Independent retailer.
As long as you're happy.
You can.
So I'm very. They've just announced the new starter boxes. Which, if you're listening to this, you're likely already playing. You're not going to need to pick up one of these, I don't think.
Those are the starter boxes are cool though, because they're different. They're a departure from last edition, right? Because they're actually fully starter boxes. Like they come with dice. Like I'll have kids come in and be like, where do I start? And I was like, oh, you could start with this one, but it's not quite everything you need.
They come with some plastic terrain, not the box turns into terrain.
Which I always thought was kind of clever.
It's smart. Yeah, it's a good use of the
But
box.
yes, but legitimately, I think if you're listening to this, you're probably not the target audience for that, but I do think it has a place. And then I notice it scales up to like the Leviathan box effectively.
Yep.
Oh yeah, you buy, and then you just buy this Terminator Librarian in your, set.
Right.
So I thought that was pretty cool. But again, I'm not really the target audience of that. And then the last thing I just wanted to talk about before we move on to the next segment was as I read through the rule book, because I'm like you, I read through the rules and then I play it and go, okay, where did I make mistakes? Boy, I won too easy. What happened? If I won, definitely mistakes have been. Was on page 12, there was right off the bat, like I like to read like where their head is at and all this. And in particular on page 13, they have like a, hey, you want to play Warhammer 40k? You start at Combat Patrol. You can diverse to Crusade or Chapter Approved types of games. The thing I noticed they have gotten rid of is like the open play.
Yeah.
Like clearly it was not landing with anybody. Nobody was playing that way. And they're like, why are we bothering?
They've also really opened up how you build an army now with 10th edition. So it kind of is open play built in open play.
That is a very good point.
You need a character.
That is a very good point.
Go.
I was impressed by that.
Yeah.
Yeah. The points are kind of an amalgamation. Like the first thing I was like, oh, they got rid of power level.
You have your detachment.
I actually really enjoyed
rules.
and I know I'm in the minority. Look, I also liked Man of Steel. I think it's the best Superman movie out there. But listen, I liked power level.
I have to call this out. There was a really funny conversation in Discord for the IC's chat, and it's like me and Carl have shared so many life experiences. Like we're the same age, but Man of Steel, like that was where the hard departure was.
That's where he knew that he's the evil Carl.
Yeah, exactly.
I love it.
Yeah, that was really funny.
And Zack Snyder's Justice League. Zack Snyder's 4-hour Justice League. Chef's kiss. I love it.
I haven't seen it. But
I'm a big Zack Snyder fan, so listen. Yeah, you can hate me for that. But in looking at this, oh, hello, McKenna. In looking at this, the thing I really appreciated was the spirit of the game here. Yeah. Because this resonated so powerfully with me. I wanted to read it here in case people have just skipped right by it and gone to the rules, which is at its heart, the Warhammer 40k game, 40,000 game, and indeed the entirety of the wider hobby is an interactive shared experience. This is something we have always talked about here. Yeah. There is no single player mode, no faceless AI to outwit. Instead, during the game, you will play against one of your friends across a tabletop or perhaps a potential friend if attending a tournament. Or sometimes when we go to tournaments, we end up playing our friends anyway. Why did I travel all the way to Chicago to get paired up against you?
Sometimes it's nice.
Yeah, this is a nice break. While the Warhammer 40,000 setting is especially grim, frequently cruel, and beset by ruthless warriors, the game is most fulfilling when played in the spirit of friendly openness and polite cooperation. There will usually be one person who wins the game, but everyone has fun when there are no special abilities suddenly sprung on unknowing players, when they congratulate opponents' seemingly unlikely dice rolls or commiserate with the destruction of a newly painted squad.
Every time.
Like every time.
Oh, new battle syndrome.
As you pack your miniatures away or share a drink with your opponent afterwards, there's few things as enjoyable as regaling each other with the most exciting moments of the game or imagining if only that last model had managed to do this.
Yeah.
I'm going to charge this guy. Well, I'm going to roll a 6 in Overwatch and blow his head off with the last cannon.
Yeah.
And you did.
Oh, look. I will remember that forever.
Yeah.
Right? It was just so funny, and we both laughed at the same time. And here's where I thought, like, man, we got to get a hobby day in together, because similarly, many people enjoy building and painting their miniatures together too, whether this be at a friend's house, in a Warhammer store, or a local gaming club, or even virtually via the internet. Even if you prefer building and painting as a relaxing and solitary pastime, there's a huge and supportive community of fellow hobbyists out there who are willing to constantly share ideas, suggest new paint schemes, ask for modeling advice, and enthuse over each other's glorious miniatures. Like that, I think these 3 paragraphs summed up for me why I love this game. And honestly, in reading that, I got like so excited to be like, man, I want to get a group together and just do some hobbying for the day. And like, we don't even have to play, just like make some progress on some models. Like I feed off of working in a group environment. And I get like some people, I think it's Justin in particular who likes to paint alone, and not really be, is it Justin or is it Jody? I don't think Jody likes painting. In it.
We've done some hobby.
We've done hobbying with both of them.
Mostly, like during COVID, we were doing a lot of hobby hangouts for our Santa Cruz dudes.
Yeah.
All online though. Just
thanks for inviting me, dude. That's cool. But
we did invite you.
Oh,
You're playing all the role playing games.
Oh yeah, that's true. That's true. We were playing Call of Cthulhu. But I think it's Justin that doesn't really like to like get together as a group and start hobbying because I think he had his setup till he burned it down.
Yeah. He didn't burn it down. It burned it down.
You know what's so funny? So again, tangent. But when I was at my family reunion, one of my cousins is actually a captain in the San Jose Fire Department. Now, we live in Morgan Hill. And he says, yeah, we get called out to Morgan Hill occasionally for these fires. And I was just down the street from your house at a fire. And then I went in, this guy had all this Warhammer stuff in the garage. I'm like, that was my friend. And I sent a picture of my cousin to Justin.
Wow, yeah.
And I was like, dude, my cousin went to your fire. He's like, yeah, as soon as I came in, he goes, I saw all the Warhammer stuff. And I was like, oh, this stuff is he goes, I was shocked that it wasn't damaged. And he was like,
that's why it survived.
And he goes, guys, don't touch any of this stuff. Leave this here.
Oh, wow. That's
like
incredible.
the fire had already been, he's like, leave this stuff here. Cause he knew I played.
That's awesome.
That's amazing.
So funny. Yeah. I haven't told Justin that yet, but it was pretty good. Nice. So anyway,
yeah,
I like those paragraphs a lot. I have a lot of times. So we don't get a lot of foot traffic, but people will be like,
what? Oh, no way.
What? There's only 4,000 people. But someone will see like us carrying down boxes or something. I'll be like, oh, I run the hobby store. And they'll be like, there's a hobby store? And they immediately always think it's video games.
Yes.
And I always say it's analog only. You have to look at the person in the eye. You're rolling dice. You're doing math. And overwhelmingly, the moms of kids just love it. Yeah. And I play video games. I love video games. I'm not crapping on video games at all. But the shared experience I think is really cool. And like for me, having Thursday nights, I open my store and a bunch of people come game. Yeah. It's like my grandpa had a bowling night.
Yeah, for sure.
You know, and
for
it's,
sure.
It's half the time I don't even game. Like I just go and I say hi. Hang out. I might put together a few models, but it's so nice to just like have that set and be able to become friends with the community. And then the other cool thing is that since I'm the store owner, I can set the tone for the community as well. So it's like, we don't have any jerks.
Yeah, like, no, you've built a great community.
You really have.
And it's like, we just have no room for that. Like you're a jerk, just leave. I don't need you. And so being able to do that and build that community has been really fulfilling and really cool.
Well, I think that's why Josh has become a friend of yours, and I'm a friend of your wife's.
It's weird when you say it like that, Carl.
Your wife and my wife get along so well. Yes. I love it. And your kids came over and went swimming the other day. I think you have. And I think, this is why you fit in with the group so well, and we all get along and we have a lot of fun. So, anyway, so that's this piece of it. We're going to come back and we're going to talk about what, Josh?
We're going to talk about Crusade and Combat Patrol and just
what appeals to us about those.
Yeah, and this is also what else Leviathan has in its release and what kind of makes it unique and different for 10th edition compared to before.
All right, so we're going to take a short break and we'll be right back. Right, and we are back talking about 10th edition and kind of leading up to 10th edition with a lot of periphery discussion about what has led us to this particular point. For those watching on YouTube, you might see we've been joined by the fourth member of our group. My Siberian Husky, Arya, is in the room. So if you hear her whining or bark, please bear with us.
She will make herself known.
She has separation anxiety. I don't know if you could hear it in the last section, but she was outside the door whining the whole time, howling. And she's got to get some teeth removed because she's got broken teeth. So she doesn't feel so good.
Poor girl.
Yeah. So if she whines a little bit, I apologize, but please bear with us. She's a lovely dog. Okay. Combat Patrol.
Yeah.
What the heck is Combat Patrol, Josh?
So Combat Patrol is a new way to play 40K, and it's essentially geared
that all rhymed.
Yeah.
A new way
to play 40K.
Keep rapping, my friend.
That's it. That's all.
Okay.
each combat patrol it's faction specific, and within each faction you have a kind of set and bespoke list, and this is really dictated for what models you have, what faction you're in, and even what loadouts you have within those units. Necron Warriors, for example, was interesting. It's like, oh, you get a squad of 10 Necron Warriors. You get 5 Gauss Reapers and 5 Gauss Flayers in the same unit. So now you have a mixed profile thing like that. But part of that is they are building these lists based upon how boxes are sold.
Right.
So there are some interesting things. There's some pros and cons there, but it's a really great way to approach 40K. It's a very approachable format to play the game. You have the models that are there. 500-point game is a relatively small size game, but you can get a lot of tactical depth and kind of back and forth and things like that. They are supposedly very well balanced to each other. We'll test the time. Yeah, we'll definitely.
And honestly, okay, keep going.
The other thing I was going to say is they even strip down the rules a bit. So while you have the same units that are available for a full 40K army, they've actually simplified them a step or two. Like some of the abilities that models have in the 40K indexes and future codexes do not exist in the Combat Patrol version. So there's a few steps removed just to get somebody really into the game, make it simpler, and maybe that's a balanced thing too at the same time. I have a feeling it's more from the mindset of let's get a new player into the game and make it even more approachable.
Yeah, and I think that's a really strong selling point for it, right? Because it eliminates some of the feel bads of somebody new coming to the hobby. I almost said sport. Somebody new coming to the hobby, and all of a sudden they're like, oh yeah, I'm facing Eldar, Wraith Knights,
right? Yeah.
Dropping, all these fate dice, and
guess what? There's no knights in Combat Patrol,
right? I mean, it eliminates. It doesn't eliminate, but it lessens the potential for somebody getting a hobby, getting dusted, and feeling like I have no way to compete. Like, how do I compete with this?
Like a gatekeeper.
Immediately, you guys are on the same footing with the same, effectively, units that are maybe not set to, provide the ideal situation for each unit.
Yeah.
But it's thematic and represented thematically, and you can struggle and fight some of the same ways.
Yeah, I think it's really nice especially for intro, right? Like you said, no gatekeeping.
Yeah.
I remember there was a game back in 3rd edition called 40K in 40 minutes.
Yeah.
And they had very specific rules about what you could and couldn't bring. And it kept out like what I call the Land Raider syndrome, which is once you got 1,500 points, you put in a Land Raider, and if the other guy didn't bring a Bright Lance, you just won.
Yeah.
Right? And so it's like it's nice, and I think
total up.
It's it's solving for that problem, which is cool. And the fact that the price points of the armies are the same, I think, is enough from a store owner perspective. It then opens it up to be like, oh, you don't have to buy. You have a viable Imperial Guard force. If you like Imperial Guard, this is not a Horde army. It costs the same amount as the Adeptus Custodes.
To buy what you like thematically.
Yeah.
You're like, oh, I just want this.
Or like, I've always wanted to play Astra Militarum, but I don't want to do a 3,000 point army.
Right.
I can do a Combat Patrol. I can paint 30 models.
Yeah, absolutely.
So even veterans who've been playing it for a long time can break off a chunk and do it.
And to that point, for the veterans gamers too, because the rules are slightly simplified from full on index or future codexes, is that if you're playing a new faction, maybe let's talk 6 months down the road here, where we're all fairly familiar with the core rule set and like feel very comfortable with it, but you want to try a new faction with it, you pick up a Combat Patrol of this new faction you want to jump into, and here are the rules presented to you in a even more slightly simplified version compared to your full codex or index that's out at that point. It really gives you kind of the flavor of how to play into it, and then you're like, okay, this is great. I already know the core rules. Now I know the Combat Patrol rules. Now let's add the full.
Yeah, even more so than what we used to use, which was Kill Team, kind of leading into, okay, we've got Kill Team, and that leads you into 40K and leads you into beyond that.
Yeah, this one is
Aria.
at least now it's mechanically the same. So it's still 40K.
Yes,
it's
exactly.
just a slightly lighter version of 40K.
And it allows you to start and then grow.
But your keywords are the same, your universal special rules are the same, those kind of things are the same, and you're just it's minus one layer of complexity. Yeah. So when you go up there, you're just adding that extra layer to kind of get you to that next level of complexity.
I think the other thing you said once, Carl, was like, hey, let's just get everyone bring a combat patrol and we can all play.
Yeah.
And I think the other thing right there is like, you can do it, that they're even. No one's gonna have a horrible time because one guy didn't hear that we're all playing friendly list.
Right.
He brought 3 knights.
What's interesting is I wonder if you see combat patrol, and I guarantee you're going to see like
tournaments
at Adepticon, combat patrol tournament.
It'll be like speed dating with 40K. And like if you can play a game of combat patrol in 45 minutes, which once everybody's familiar with what they have going on, you probably can.
Yeah.
That sounds way more fun for me. Like I'm not a tournament guy. But three combat patrol tournament like in a day where like 45 minutes, that actually sounds enjoyable.
Yeah. I think the one drawback for me is I'm not a huge fan of, we're all laughing because my poor dog is over here. I'm going to move her out of the room. But let me posit this is I'm not a huge fan of my combat patrol for my Thousand Sons. I'm like, it's okay.
There are a few cons to it, which we can jump into.
Yeah, I will say the Chaos Space Marine one looks a little more interesting to me.
So one of the big drawbacks that we've encountered with Combat Patrol so far is that not all the boxes are available, and some people don't have those existing models in their collection. Like my game with Craig was a great example of that. He wasn't a particular fan of how Penitent Engines play in previous edition, or he doesn't like the models is also part of it. So he doesn't have those in his collection. Mm-hmm. So he was not able to field a Combat Patrol box, even though he has a fairly robust Sisters of Battle collection.
Yeah.
So there's that one side of things is that not having the models yet, and maybe it is an army you've already bought into, and the Combat Patrol doesn't make sense to supplement your existing army. The other side of that would be on as to what Carl was just saying there, is that you don't necessarily like the flavor of what that Combat Patrol's bringing. It's not a set of models that appeals to you. It's not how you want to play that faction.
Yeah, I have that experience with Eldar actually, because I think the Combat Patrol for Eldar is Guardians, Bikes, a Wraithlord, and a Farseer. Which is like, I've never really loved Guardians. The new models are sick, so I'm probably changing that.
Yeah.
And I might do an Exodite, which changes it up because then I can model them however I want. But yeah, I'm in the same. I looked at the Eldar one. I was like, I don't really like that from a Combat Patrol perspective. But I also have a ton of other Eldar. I could conceivably play a 1,000-point game with Eldar that's not Combat Patrol. But Leagues of Votann, which I've never played, I've got the starter army set, which to my understanding is pretty much the Combat Patrol. I think you might need some Berserkers.
That would make sense. Them being a major recent box release.
And the Astra Militarum army is the Combat Patrol from the starter set box.
Fantastic. Yeah.
So it's like, okay. And then that's really nice for me looking at, I don't have to buy a ton of stuff. So I think, there's definitely gives and takes on it.
The third weird thing is some of them are funky loadouts because they are building these lists to how the boxes are sold, and the boxes aren't necessarily sold of how you want to run a unit once you're more familiar with those models or that army, etc. The example I gave earlier with the Necrons having split just makes the game a little bit more complicated to play because now I have 2 weapon profiles in the same unit, so I can't, like, my fast dice rolling is these guys are strength 5 with a -1 AP. These guys are rapid fire with twice the range, but 1 less strength, no AP. So it slows the game down a little bit, but that's how they are selling them and showing a variety of what is out there. So it's a good sampler platter.
I wonder if they will release additional Combat Patrol lists as variations of, the idea is you buy the box and you play it, but for example, the Chaos Demons has no Tzeentch demons. It's all Khorne.
Interesting.
But I'm a Tzeentch demon guy. Yeah. I wonder if at some point they release Combat Patrol balanced or the thought is, these are Combat Patrol balanced to other Combat Patrols. They could do it in White Dwarf, right? Here's a White Dwarf Combat Patrol for this particular army if you want to play your friends and remain in that kind of same sphere. I could see them generating a lot of content that way as well as
I could see them doing that with
variations
with all
of
the box
Eldar
sets.
races. Yeah.
Right. Like they release a ton of dual army box sets. They released the Christmas battle forces.
Yeah.
Like the fact that you could build
call.
actually usable armies out of those. That's what
a-
those have always been missing.
That's a good call, right?
So-
Right. That's what they've been trying to do, but always kind of
Fell short. But now, if they
were
release like a Christmas 2 army box set,
Right.
it's like,
it's
2 combat patrols.
2 combat patrols.
Oh, that's a good idea.
I think, and then you could do it just as a slip in the box or White Dwarf, or as we've seen, free PDFs that they've been doing.
Or even if you just put out the index card pack that's of the combat patrol, because the rules are a little bit different compared to full 40k.
Yeah.
So like you need to have that reference somewhere.
They've also been doing a lot of compendiums and annuals, like Warcry has one,
Yeah.
Kill Team
Yep.
has one,
Yep.
right? So they could also release it in a compendium type of thing.
That would be amazing.
Which would be really fun.
I would not be surprised to see that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, if you think about it, it's just really a different way to play. You're not list building. It removes the list building from the whole effort, which some people love. Some people absolutely love list building.
Yeah.
I'm okay on it.
Yeah.
You know, I see it as a requirement to play the game, and to personalize my army.
Yeah,
Right.
absolutely.
But I could see picking up, a combat patrol or going to my collection and saying, "Oh, I have these, but I need this one more model to make a combat patrol."
Yeah.
For my Zeech demons. Cool, I'll do that.
It's very,
like, as I've said a few times, like I'm going to play Eldar probably in once I
At some
get
point.
more of my Sharkadons to the Primaris painted stage. Like I will play Eldar, and I think starting with a combat patrol is going to be the natural place for me to jump into that faction. And grow it from there into a more full-fledged army again.
They're killing me though. Dire Avengers used to be troops, and now they're not
oh my
troops.
gosh, I read that and I was like, "What are you doing?"
And now,
But you don't need troops anymore.
Now
so
they're
what
in
does
the
it
other
mean?
category. You don't. Yes, this is true.
We had this exact
Exactly.
conversation.
You're like, oh, I don't have a legal army. Wait, you don't need battle line units.
Yeah,
No.
we had this exact
that's
conversation.
But they do hold objectives better.
Yeah.
But yes, I agree.
Yeah, and I've never. I said this while you were taking Arya. I've never really loved Guardians.
Yeah,
And so the
me
fact
either.
that the battle line are all Guardians and Eldar, I was like, oh, sorry.
Yeah. Which it makes, so I was trying to figure out paint scheme and list. Like I've already done some list building for Eldar, even though by the time I get to them, it probably won't be the index anymore. But Guardians have never had super appeal for me either. But I'm like, also, they're the one thing that really has the craftword color scheme other than your kind of Farseers and Warlocks and things like that and tanks.
You know what I will say though? I do like the Eldar combat patrol.
Yeah.
Oh, I
no,
don't like it.
I do.
because of the Guardians.
And I have. I'm not a
yeah.
huge fan of the Guardians, but I have them.
Yeah.
But I like that they have a
You get the Wraith Lord.
Wraith Lord in there.
Yeah.
Wraith Lord is probably one of my favorite models. Of all.
Wraith Lords, jet bikes.
Yeah, I ran it. My old Eldar army is an Iondon list. So I'm a big fan of the Ghost Warriors.
Yeah.
All of them.
Yeah.
All right. Well,
Yeah.
cool.
There's endless possibilities, right?
Endless possibilities. Right on.
So-
I'm excited about it. I am excited about it. I love to see where they take it. I'm totally fine. Basically, all we're saying is GW's providing you preset lists. Cool.
I also,
I'd buy a book of preset lists. I'm telling you right now, GW.
you'll get a Carl with the
Yeah.
the preset list book.
Get a Carl coin.
I wonder how they balance them.
They do play a little bit differently from 40k, not in just that the rules are slightly simplified on the index cards that the combat patrols are using. It is a smaller table, so it's a 44 by 30 is the recommended table.
Makes sense. It's a very small force.
It's about half size compared to your strike force and plus size games. It also has their own set of missions. So there are combat patrol specific missions, which changes a few things like I mentioned earlier. Like objectives are sticky because you only have a handful of units on the board. So being able to
Makes
grab
sense.
an objective and keep that objective until somebody comes and forcibly grabs it makes sense, right? Because you only have
Jet bikes,
4
you
units.
say.
Yeah, really good in combat patrol. I can only imagine.
I can only imagine, right? Because it's swooping around. Yeah.
Absolutely.
The other thing for me is really interesting. Over the past few years, GW has done a much better job of having different points that people can get into the game.
Yeah.
And so like Kill Team, and I love Kill Team.
Yep.
It is not an entry into 40k right now.
Not really.
It's
No.
It's a completely different game. And that's what a lot of people who play 40k don't like Kill Team is like, it's a different game. It's just playing with the same models.
Yeah.
Right.
And so Combat Patrol, again, is like some kid comes in and says, how do I get in this game? And I say, do this,
Here's
come
how you
back
get
in a
it.
couple weeks and we
Grow
can
into
play a
it.
game.
Yeah.
Right. And I just think it's good business sense, but it's also good for the community because anytime we can get more people playing
100%.
with a low barrier, it's just benefit for all of us.
100%. And let me tell you, like the reason I got into 40K was I tried to join another community and it was difficult to get into.
Yeah.
It was the
Grognard's
RC car racing community, and like I built my car. I was all ready, and I went to, they raced them, and I've told this story before. And I went there, and nobody would talk to me. Like I'd try to engage in conversation. People are changing their tires and doing all this stuff, and they have like set up pop-up tents to do all this stuff. Nobody would engage with me. And later I went to a forum that they were all on, and they're like, and I saw some posts, and they're like, we really need to get more people in this hobby. Sound familiar?
Yeah.
Right? We really need to get more people in this hobby. I go, well, let me tell you why you're not, And then one guy was like, well, come back and I'll help. And I was like, ship is sailed.
Yeah.
I've already bought a bunch of 40Ks.
We got him.
My money is allocated elsewhere.
I mean, so it's very important to
Hey,
make
I'm glad those guys were not accommodated.
Yeah, me too.
Because here we are. So
I'll tell you the story later. But anyway, so there's, I think the barrier to entry being lowered, it's still, Jeff would always complain that the cost barrier to entry is too high. I'm like, well, it is what it is. That's the cost. But this is a pretty easy method of jumping in.
Yeah.
I agree with you. I'm very excited about
And for a lot of people with robust collections, like you probably already have the models. So for me, like I already had all the Necron models. I just had to paint my Doomstalker, which was already a work in progress anyways.
I'm missing like one guy from the Thousand Sons. He's just not painted.
Yeah.
I literally reached out to Colin. I was like, hey, Colin.
Paint one dude.
I need you to paint one dude.
Yeah.
Okay, maybe another guy.
An interesting thing for me with Combat Patrol is our extended community. So like Blake, Ed, Travis, Jody, those guys are way more excited about Combat Patrol as a way to play 40K right now.
Yeah, the other thing it does, and this is one of the drawbacks of 40K, is, and why board games have been winning out in my household lately, is just the time to set up and play is a significantly more involved process. This is less time to set up and get going. It lowers that barrier even further.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. So I was going to say is like on a Thursday night, right? You could play a 5-hour game if you both show up on time and you're both willing to stay till midnight and your partners or children or work or whatever is fine the next day. But that's why Kill Team always went out for me because I could play 2 games. And also if I lost a game of Kill Team, we could just re-rack it and play it again in the same night, right?
Yes.
Like, so all those things go into how often you're playing, what are you playing, who are you playing with? 5.5 hour game at 1,500 points scares me a little bit, but I know that's early edition.
Right.
That'll
definitely
that happened in 8th
like,
too.
Yeah.
Like, and to be fair, the book call out of a 2,000 point game is roughly 3 hours. And like, we're not just busting it out. Like we're also friends, so we're hanging out, we're catching up.
Right.
All my games last that long because I'm usually
having too much fun,
shooting the bull.
Yeah.
Which is why you're actually there, right? To go back to you're there to have fun.
That's right. So I think bottom line, thumbs up on Combat Patrol for us.
Yeah. I think having an event where everybody brings a Combat Patrol and we're going to play like 6 games in a day.
Yeah.
You get a handful of people and everybody just plays everybody else. And
what is the table size in?
22 by 30?
44 by 30.
44 by 30.
Which your Strike Force games
Everything
are
comes
44
in
by 60, which is what your quote standard 40K has been. So it's just half
2 of those boards.
So you could fit 2 of those on a typical 6x4.
Yeah.
Which is great.
Yeah.
That's fantastic for tournament organizers, for people that are just hosting at their house. Like
for Table War, another sponsor, by the way, to sell more mats.
Yeah. I love their mats.
I have so many of their 4x6 mats.
Yeah.
So many.
Which I cut mine down to 44 by 60 because I actually like the way the game plays in that slightly smaller thing. Like Assault is a little bit more viable because you get in sooner.
Yeah,
You're not gonna get shot off the board.
they've designed it, I think, for a number of reasons for this. One, the box sizes, we talked about that. Yeah. The fold out maps fit in the box size for the size. I think they also recognize, most people don't have a huge gaming table. Yeah. They have a dining room table. Yeah. This fits on a dining room table. Let's go a little bit smaller on the battlefield. And it makes sense. It makes the game a little more compressed and action.
It's a little more dynamic in how it actually plays out too. So I will I'll be actually checking out Table War to pick up probably a 44 by
I don't know if they've even released them yet. I'll have to check.
Or I'll just buy another one and cut it in half, and I got 2 tables ready to go there.
I think they do have 44 by 30s. I was just looking.
I wouldn't be surprised.
They had a 4th of July sale I was looking at.
Well, if they do, I'll put a link in the show notes. Too.
Yeah. So anyways,
And then I'll place an order.
It'll be worth picking up for small, even if I'm playing a 500 point game, whether it's Combat Patrol
Right.
or elsewise, like that's all you need for
Right.
table space there. So
Right.
yeah.
Oh man, I'm looking at seriously like I have those Forge World tables that are 4x6. I have
4x6 is still perfectly
It's still viable.
Yeah,
I mean, just for a bigger game.
Yeah.
I think for a bigger game.
Yep.
But I've got like all those hard, what were the Realm of Battle boards? I've got 2 of
the
them.
hard plastic.
I've got 2 of those.
That
fully
nice
painted.
hollow dice hitting sound.
Where your
Yeah.
models just slide off the hill.
Yeah.
Well, if you got the hill like flocked and
Yeah,
stuff, it doesn't. But still, they do. Let's be honest.
I've got a set at my store that I haven't broken out yet. I still repaint them.
I got 2 fully painted sets. And the Forge World tiles that plug into them too.
Those Forge World tiles are
that
so
Thunderhawk one is amazing.
I love it.
You have
Remember
that one?
Yep.
That Salamanders game we played with your triple Turvagon list. That
Yep.
was probably one of the
Oh,
most
I remember
fun
that.
games that I've ever played.
Speaking of the Turvagons,
Yeah.
Did my
yeah.
Trigon come up and like devour a whole unit?
Yep. Yes, it did.
It's like
It was the Stern Guard. Right after I gunned down your Hive Tyrant, your flying Hive Tyrant, killed it in one round of shooting, and then your
Trigon came up from
Just jumped up
and ate all the Stern
ate all
Guards.
my
It was like
Stern Guard,
Starship
yeah.
Troopers.
It was a great
It
game.
was a super good game.
And that was the one where I was like, okay, these guys backwards are part of this squad. Going back to our original point,
yeah.
right? Because I had so many,
Yeah,
so many gaunts on the table.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know. And they're all just spray painted green at this point.
Still a fun game.
It was great.
Yep.
Josh and I have had some amazing games.
Yeah.
All right. What's next?
Next up, I think we're good on Combat Patrol.
Yeah, I
so
agree.
we can jump into Crusade, which is a little special bonus that the Leviathan book has on offer here.
Yeah.
Similar to existing Crusade, which I think most people are probably familiar with at this point. Whether you played it or not, you've at least heard of it, you're familiar with it. At its base level, there's not a lot that's super different. Like it still uses experience points, or I'm blanking on what they actually call them. Yeah, it's still experience points. And there's rank levels similar to how existing Crusade worked, and also how Kill Team work.
Yep.
And that every time a model participates in a game, it's going to get an experience point. For every 3 units destroyed by one of your units, it will gain an experience point. So that's something you're just going to track across multiple games. For every 3 kills, you're going to gain an experience point. And then at the end of the game, you're going to mark one of your units as marked for honor, or marked for greatness. Yeah. And they're going to get 3 experience points there. And then there's different ranks. And every time you go up a rank, you're either going to gain a battle trait, or you're going to gain a weapon upgrade, something like that, one of the battle honors. And you get to choose what kind of category of battle honors you want to cash that in for.
Right.
The big thing that this has compared to the existing Crusades is that there's not nearly as many options right now. So there aren't a ton of things that you're tracking individually. You are still tracking these things for each unit. So across a larger Crusade roster, you are still tracking stuff for every.
So there's a lot of
there.
bookkeeping.
There is more bookkeeping compared to your standard games of 40K. But as it is right now, there's only Crusade information in it for Leviathan. I don't know how much backwards compatibility anybody would want to bring into it, because every codex released for 9th edition had their own Crusade segment in there, which had agendas and artifacts, things like that for that specific faction.
Right.
So right now, with 10th edition being the fresh start, you only have one set of battle traits, you only have one set of agendas, you only have one set of relics, things like that, and that's all in this one book. So there are a lot fewer options.
Right.
When you are big picture looking at what you're tracking, what you're choosing, and everything like that too.
And so to be clear, just so we're separating the two, there are some core Crusade rules.
Yeah.
But then the really flavorful piece comes from the specific faction Crusade rules that come in the Tyrannic War section of the Leviathan book. So that does not exist for, say, Sisters of Battle and Dark Eldar fighting.
Yet, right?
Yet.
Yeah. So 9th edition, what they did is not only every codex came out with their own set of Crusade rules, but then there was also like battle zone books for this Crusade kind of war zone in a book that has relics that are relevant to this area, this theater of battle.
Right.
Relics, agendas, and battle traits that are going to be specific to a war zone, which just thematically tie it in. And this is a more narrative focused way to play a game.
Yeah.
Which I didn't say at the beginning here. So what Leviathan brings is it's got its own set of agendas, but then there's the Tyrannic War campaign in there, and this is their Crusade campaign. And what that is doing, it's very thematic for Tyranid invasion.
Right.
And they did a cool thing for the actual campaign part of it, in where it's basically Imperial factions, and then it's the Tyranid factions plus any opportunistic factions that want to jump in with that. So it could be Eldar or Chaos wanting to take advantage. It's not just the old Order and Disorder though. So there's actually a third faction in that called Raiders, which is really cool. And like it's Necrons waking up trying to reclaim Tomb Worlds, or it's Eldar or Dark Eldar just looking to do their own thing there. So instead of just kind of the good bad or Order Disorder, they've accounted for that in a third faction and how it plays out. And I thought that was a neat touch.
I kind of feel like it would be really interesting. So the typical releases for Games Workshop tend to be, okay, so we have core rules, you have all the codexes, right? Yep. And then what happens is, hey, we're going to release this book that introduces this new way of playing, or these, I'm trying to
battle
think of
zones. Examples.
What I would love for them to focus on is battle zones, where it's like, and maybe this is just me and the Crusade part of me, right? I'd love to see them embrace the Crusade stuff more, where it's like, we're just releasing the equivalent of effectively modules for like a role-playing game like Dungeons and Dragons. But here, what we're releasing is these Crusade theaters, and here's all the things available in this Crusade, and this Crusade only. Core game, notwithstanding if you're playing in this Crusade or this campaign that involves this Crusade, here's the things that are available. And that way they're able to separate kind of like the creep of that stuff into the core game that allows them to run tournaments and do all those things and keep those things balanced without you having to look at 8 different books.
Right.
Which is always the problem at the end of
Which is always a problem at the end of edition.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Keep the core, but then give some narrative options, which I think is a great solution.
But how do you expand that core at that point, right? How do you keep those players continuing to be customers? I mean, that's the trick, I think. And that's why we keep running into this same problem that we saw in 6th edition, well, more 7th edition, 8th edition, 9th edition. By the time 9th edition reached its pinnacle of, products out there, not pinnacle of gameplay, but pinnacle of products out there, I would say we did exactly what we did in 7th edition. How did we not learn what we did there? That was the whole objective of 8th edition was, we've learned a lot from that. And it's like,
reset.
Did we forget something, or is it intentional? We go through this cycle, we reset, boy, I hope not. Like, there's gotta be better ways, and I'm not sure what those are. Again, I'm not the expert, but there's gotta be better ways to increase the longevity of the game and the longevity of the game as customers, meaning I continue to buy things, yet not have the game become so complex that it's overbearing.
Yeah.
I think for me, one of the problems is when they release the new Battlezone or book or whatever, is if they put new models in there.
Yes.
Then it has to be cross-compatible.
Right.
Right. If it's just a gameplay thing where it's like, hey, this is a standalone, expansion or whatever.
Yep.
Then you can do whatever you want. But I remember talking to someone once, and the reason I was talking about how great the Warhammer Underworlds models are. I don't like the game, but the models are some of my favorite.
Yeah, fantastic.
Mm-hmm. And they said the reason they're able to make such artistic models is, for instance, the vampire with the giant mace.
Right.
He's beautiful. And they can make that model because they don't have to then have rules for him for the next 10 editions of fantasy.
Agreed.
And so I think there's like, they're a model company at the end of the day, you know? And so when you think about,
that's
how do
they say?
That's what they say. I mean, it does. I think it pushes a lot of their business decisions.
Arguably, that's what they used to say.
Yeah.
Like, I have not heard them say that in a long time.
I think they still design models first and then apply rules to models.
I agree that they
Yeah.
do. Like, I don't think that philosophy has changed, but arguably they are more than a model company.
Well, I mean,
I think they know it too. They've
they're
invested
a brand
lot in
and an
game
IP and
yes.
all that.
And even Citadel Miniatures isn't really a thing anymore. It's now Citadel Paints.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's in hobby tools and things like that.
But that'd be, I've never played Crusade. One of the biggest things that I heard from Crusade in last edition was that it was a lot of bookkeeping, which I don't really care about, but that it took forever for you to gain upgrades.
Mm-hmm.
Like Craig's great example, our friend, we were going to do a Crusade game and he saw that it would take him like 50 games to get a Saint.
That's insane.
And it's like, by that point, why don't you just play with the Saint, you know?
Yeah.
And so I think it'd be interesting to have a full, like, separate Crusade booklet, you know, where it's like, let's run it. I think it'd be cool if you could do Combat Patrol and Crusades. Obviously, they're two different ways to play. But it would be nice if you could say, hey, here's your Combat Patrol. Here's what you start off with as a new player.
It evolves.
And here's how you evolve from it. And this is how you do it for all of the factions at the same time.
That's
so
an
we're
interesting
all on a
idea.
level playing field.
That's a really interesting idea, how a Combat Patrol, it doesn't force you, but to a degree, it limits your growth in a way in which you can, it almost creates a slow grow league narrative.
Yeah. Which is a great way to do it. And there's nothing, I mean, by the rules as written, your order of battle starts at 1,000 points, which Combat Patrols are roughly 500. But there's nothing to say you couldn't apply that to a 500 point game. What I would be curious to see is if they do more of a battle zone thing is, for non-Crusade games, you have thematic missions that are tied into this battle zone, and that's interesting for people who are not playing Crusade missions. So you have kind of a mission pack that are thematically tied in, and then you have possibly something like the upgrades, enhancements that are tied into that battle zone also, that anybody playing a full game of 40k could play. You're like, okay, let's play this game in this battle zone, and now we have these missions and these enhancements, and aside from that, it's still 40k, but there's something cool and thematically tied into that. But then you have the Crusade pack, which you get agendas, you get battle traits, you get upgrades, whatever you want to do that are specific to that battle zone, and then you just go full on Crusade. The entire Crusade takes place in this battle zone.
Yeah.
You've got all these things that are happening there, and then as codexes come out, I imagine codexes are going to have Crusade content.
I would imagine so.
As they did with the last edition.
Yeah.
I think that would be a cool way to keep 40k interesting for everybody who's not playing Crusade, and then also have an interesting kind of...
Yeah. You are right, though, in terms of if a Crusade thing came out and they're released and they're like, oh, well, here's this new model available. It's like, well, okay.
Right.
But now we have to make sure it works within 40K.
Right.
I mean, I would almost say the reverse should be the approach.
Right.
Like focus on the 40K and the balance of the game, and then introduce that model at the same time. You know, hey, here's its data sheet. It comes with the pack you buy.
Right.
For 40K. 40K is still Crusade, you know, but now you can enhance this thing as well. It's included in the Crusade thing. I think we need to reverse that, you know. Yeah. That doesn't become the release factor for the model. The model comes out when the model comes out. And, we write a Crusade thing that supports it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, look, I've always loved the idea of Crusade.
Yeah.
I felt like in 9th edition, again, by the time we went to go play it, I was so encumbered.
Sure. Yeah. Yep.
You know, but this and Combat Patrol really have me excited.
Yeah.
Really have me excited.
They did do a few small things in this with Crusade with the battle honors, and that there's fewer charts and options.
Yeah.
Where if you're doing a weapon upgrade, it's a weapon upgrade. It's not, here's a melee specific weapon upgrade chart, here's a range weapon upgrade chart. Here's a monster upgrade chart. Here's a tank upgrade chart. They've consolidated a few of those, and like weapon upgrades are just weapon upgrades, and it doesn't matter what type of weapon it is. You just get that benefit, or they kind of combine them both into one. So it's compacted a little bit and simplified slightly, but at the heart of it, it's still doing the same thing.
Yeah, I mean, I think
still are tracking.
I think honestly, to do it, you're going to have to track stuff. Period.
Yeah.
Like it's just That's just the nature of the game. You're adding a level of complexity. Yes, of course, we understand that going into it. I don't want to do this right away.
Right.
I want to do Combat Patrol, learn the game, learn how to play it faster.
For sure. Right.
And then say, hey, is anybody interested in doing a Crusade?
Yeah. And I think that's a great idea.
Yeah, I think that's probably the best approach.
And this actually having a more fleshed out campaign system in it, which I don't remember being an existing Crusade. It was just kind of
it was really
everybody's doing their own thing.
You're just fighting battles.
Which this is like you have factions. Everybody plays a number of games per round based upon how many players there are in the Crusade. So it's a little bit more structured in that sense, which I appreciate. So it's more of that kind of it's taking the essence of those Forge World campaign systems and then just kind of distilling that into something a little bit smaller and simpler and more approachable for everybody.
I was a huge fan of those Warzone books.
Yeah.
Like I was a huge fan, and Aaron and I played through one of them, and it was a lot of fun. So
it's cool to be able to see them progress and your units progress. I think even just thinking about index cards with Crusade, I think just even that being like, this is my unit, I'm upgrading on this card, I can carry it with me like that. Even just that is cool. I think
for sure.
It immerses you more in the game.
Yeah. All right. Anything else we want to add about Crusade? Are we good?
Yeah, we'll see what more comes out, but I think it's a fun start, and they're only going to add more to it.
Yeah. All right. Well, what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and we'll close out this part of the show. We'll come back. We'll give you our kind of final thoughts and a few other points there, and then we'll end the show. So bear with us. We'll be right back. All right, and we are back to kind of give our final thoughts here, and I think I kind of want to end this on what are we excited about here? What has reinvigorated our excitement for 40K with 10th edition, and why should you be excited about 10th edition, at least from our perspective? And for me, certainly the new ways of playing the game, excite me. I think the most exciting thing for me is the restart of everything. I use the word simplification, but you know what I mean, like the
simplified, not simple.
The drawing of a line in the sand and saying, okay, here's where everybody's starting, allows me to once again jump into something that I have enjoyed a tremendous amount. I've spent a tremendous amount of time and money on, and fun with friends.
Yeah.
And so the excitement for me is getting to jump into that again. Even my wife getting excited about jumping into it is like, whoa, okay, we're in. And she's played a little bit. She enjoyed the Eldar, but she really is excited about the Chaos. She's read Night Lord series, and that was it. Like
does it for everybody.
It was a done deal after that. So for me, that's the excitement, is getting the group involved again. We've certainly come out of the pandemic at this point.
Yeah.
And being able to get back to kind of where we were, which was we were playing a lot in the day. So.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, it's definitely, we're capitalizing on all the excitement that there is there. There is that hard reset. Everybody's on that same page. All that rules bloat has been cut out. We're all learning new stuff again. So it's like fun and exciting of solving problems and figuring out synergies and lists and things like that work together. And there's just so much buzz and excitement around 40K right now, which I couldn't say had been there for the last several years.
Absolutely hasn't.
Especially locally in our group. But
yeah. What about you? Sell more models.
Yeah. Buy more. No, so I played one game of 8th, one game of 9th. And the last edition I really played was 5th edition. So
you missed out on 8th. 8th was really a great.
That was a good time.
It was at the tail end of 8th, and I was like, what are these mortal wounds? And I was really pissed off because Eldrad Ulthwan was not nearly as good as he was the last time I played him. So I could have played more. But 9th edition, I was looking at AdMech, and I remember trying to read through their army rules, and they had like these rules that went in the opposite direction, and then Elsarius Call changed it. I was like, I'm just gonna go play another game that's a little bit easier to do. So I'm super excited. I've been in love with Warhammer 40k lore and the model since I was 14, and so it's I've definitely missed playing it.
Yeah.
Like we talk in tech about tech debt. I feel like the tech debt tech debt has been removed from 40k. And so now it's like, all right, we're all relearning it.
Yeah.
We all have different armies. I don't have to know how to counter your Death Guard spam, whatever it is. I didn't miss out on some FAQ that said suddenly, I think it was called Armor of Contempt matters, right? Like there's none of that. And so I'm really excited about that. I'm also excited, especially about Combat Patrol, to be able to just have a set army that's playable as its own. If I want to expand it, I can.
Yeah.
And then from a store perspective, so many people are really excited about it. I think there's been a lot of building excitement, a lot of people waiting for 10th to come. And a lot of people, jump back in. People have been away for a while. And, I think the cards and the way, like if you've been playing 40k for a while, I think when you first look at it, you're like, wait, there's only 5 stats or whatever. Now where are the other 7? And then you go and you realize it's the same game. It's just streamlined a bit. And it's still the same. I'm still shooting bolters. My Elder Guardians are still folding like a wet paper bag. So I'm really excited about that. And to be able to build the community at our store. So.
Very cool. Very cool. All right. Well, listen, please, if you're listening to this through iTunes, go leave us a review on iTunes. That's where you download it. That's where the majority of people do. Or, if you're downloading it through your app of choice and you have the ability to leave reviews, we really do appreciate it. If you have any feedback for us, we're available via email. You can send email to carl@theindependentcharacters.com. Did I set you up with your Josh one yet? I need to set you up with
talked
Josh.
about it. I don't know if we did.
I need to set him up with Josh at theindependentcharacters.com. That's independent with an E, not an A. There's no A in independent.
All E's all the time.
Yeah, listen.
For all the British readers?
Been a thing.
Except in characters.
There's A's in the characters. It's the longest damn domain name.
It really is.
I swear. When Jeff and I came up with the name for the show, I was like, oh my God, do you realize how long this is to type out? We have a great Facebook group. I recognize Threads is a new thing. I signed up for a Threads account. Cool, whatever. I never really was a big Twitter user, so there you go. But our Facebook group is hopping, and a lot of the things, if you're watching on YouTube, that you're seeing here are coming from our Facebook group, and it's such a great community of people. It's super fun. I know there's a lot of crossover between Skye's community and ours as well. And then last but not least, as I just mentioned, we are doing this on YouTube. Josh is spending a whole lot of effort to edit these and put them on YouTube, and we've been trying to overcome a couple technical hurdles.
I think we got it.
That we've imposed on ourselves, but I think we've solved that.
Yeah.
Anything you guys want to add before we close out the show?
Windmill slam that subscribe button.
It's just supposed to be like above me is the subscribe button, and below click for notifications. Right? Here, what's your clickbait title? You won't believe what Games Workshop did in 10th edition.
It's probably already been used.
Yeah.
It's all in the on the thumbnail.
What is Henry Cavill going to play in 10th edition? We'll have a picture of Henry Cavill, even though he has nothing to do with our video.
Custodes.
God, drives me bonkers. All right. Well, anyway, until next time, this is Carl.
This is Josh.
This is Skye.
And we're coming to you from the Astronomicon, where hopefully we learned from the past mistakes of 7th and 8th edition.
And once again, the golden age of gaming is upon us.
Work less, game more.
There you go. Couldn't have said it better myself. We'll see you next time. This episode of The Independent Characters is protected by the Creative Commons license. If you have further questions as to its use, you can find information on the front page at theindependentcharacters.com.